Chapter 51. Facing Yeting's quick defense, Hufflepuff's result can be imagined. Hufflepuff's chasers tried to break through the defense quickly, but failed. Facing Yeting, who was already attacking him at high speed, he had no choice but to take a shot from a distance in a panic, hoping to score by force from a long shot. But not everyone has the same long-range shooting ability as Yeting. The Hufflepuff chaser obviously lacked arm strength, and the quaffle he threw was not fast enough, and was easily confiscated by the goalkeeper before it was about to enter the goal. Seeing this, Yeting immediately gestured to the goalkeeper, then turned around and accelerated towards the Hufflepuff goal. The keeper got the signal and threw the quaffle as hard as he could into the Hufflepuff half. Since Hufflepuff's chasers were far away from their own half and had been struggling with their opponents in front of Ravenclaw's scoring area, they were unable to defend in time in the face of such a quick counterattack. Yeting, on the other hand, accurately caught the quaffle in the air, and then flew straight towards the Hufflepuff goal, forming a single strike. Hufflepuff's goalkeeper tried his best to defend, but because the gap between him and his opponent was too big, Yeting easily scored another 10 points. 80-0. Lee Jordan shouted. There was an uproar in the audience. Not even the three-man guard could stop Yeting's offensive. Who else can stop him? After scoring the goal, Yeting adjusted the team's tactics. Although he can handle three-man marking, this tactic really disgusts him. Therefore, in the next game, the Ravenclaw team seemed to have changed people, and their tactical style changed drastically. Facing Hufflepuff's attack, Ravenclaw's chasers mainly focused on blocking and slowing down their opponents, and only started to fight against their opponents in their own half. In addition, while fighting, the Ravenclaw chasers always kept a chaser behind the Hufflepuff players. It is worth mentioning that Yeting did not act alone this time, hoping to use his personal ability to find flaws in the opponent's pass and steal it. Instead, he stayed with his teammates to maintain formation and prevent being beaten by Hufflepuff again. Splits around. On the Hufflepuff side, Diggory tried to direct his teammates to surround Yeting several times, but every time it ended because of interceptions by other Ravenclaw players. Faced with such tactics, Hufflepuff's offense was completely contained, and the players could not speed up. The scene was chaotic, and the quaffle changed hands several times. Finally, the quaffle was caught in Yeting's hand, and he threw the quaffle towards Hufflepuff's half without thinking. At the moment, Roger, who was closest to the Hufflepuff half, also reacted. He turned 180 degrees according to the tactics and flew towards the Hufflepuff goal. Because Yeting controlled the force just right, the quaffle flew right in front of him. He caught the ball accurately and faced the Hufflepuff goalkeeper with a single blow. On the other side, the Ravenclaw batters also came out to entangle the Hufflepuff batters so that they could not interfere with the duel between Roger and the keeper. At the moment, Hufflepuff's chasers were frantically defending, so Roger only had one chance to attack. 3 goals, 2/3 chance of scoring a goal. Roger's pitching shot was steady. The score was 90-0. Roger successfully scored the goal. This is one of Yeting's tactics, defensive counterattack. The ensuing battle was one-sided. Facing Ravenclaw's counterattack tactics, Hufflepuff seemed timid and did not dare to attack with all its strength. Therefore, Ravenclaw formed a 3-on-2 situation on the offensive end. In this case, Ravenclaw used Quidditch's traditional tactic, the Eaglehead offensive formation. 3 chasers formed a tight triangle formation to attack the opponent's formation, and successfully defeated Hufflepuff's formation. The 2 chasers separated themselves so that they could not pass to each other, then surrounded the ball carrier and successfully completed the steal. Facing Ravenclaw's endless tactics, Hufflepuff was completely overwhelmed. Soon, the score broke through to 170-0. In desperation, they had no choice but to use Hufflepuff's best strategy, stalling, delaying the game until the Ravenclaw players were exhausted, and then counterattacked through physical superiority. In the past games, they were able to defeat Ravenclaw because of this move. However, this was something Yeting had expected. After opening up a point difference of more than 150 points, Ravenclaw began to reduce flights and increase passes. The 3 chasers constantly passed each other in the midfield, which in turn caused the Hufflepuff players to they were exhausted, but the Ravenclaw players managed to save their energy. In the end, even if Diggory was superior and caught the golden snitch one step ahead of Zhongqiu, he still could not save Hufflepuff's defeat. In the end, Ravenclaw defeated Hufflepuff with a huge score of 270-160. This was Ravenclaw's long-awaited victory, and the entire team was immersed in a sea of joy. As for Yeting, who was the biggest contributor. He was carried by the team members and walked around the Quidditch pitch. You know, most of the Ravenclaw team members are girls. After experiencing the fierce competition, they still have the physical strength to do such a thing, and their excitement is evident. After this battle, the entire Hogwarts saw Yeting's powerful personal ability and tactical commanding ability. The Gryffindor and Slytherin teams were faced with a formidable enemy and made studying how to deal with Yeting a current priority for the team. Top priority. Yeting's female fans enthusiastically regard him as a Quidditch superstar and believe that he will dominate the Quidditch World Cup in the future. Chapter 52. It has been more than a month since Ravenclaw defeated Hufflepuff, and the long-awaited Christmas for the little necromancers is approaching. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts School woke up from a dream and found that the surroundings were covered with several feet of snow and the lake was covered with hard ice. The Weasley twins were punished for enchanting several snowballs to chase Quirrell around and hit him on the back of his turban. Yeting knew what was wrapped in that turban: Voldemort's disgusting ugly face. Voldemort parasitized poor Professor Quirrell, and his face appeared on the back of Professor Quirrell's bare head. In order to cover up all this, Professor Quirrell had to wear a weird headscarf, and also used the smell of garlic to cover up Voldemort's rotten smell. This smell did not hide from the sensitive Fichu. From then on, she saw the strange Professor Lowell hide far away. Several owls flew through the windy and snowy sky to deliver the mail. After experiencing a lot of hardships, they had to regain their strength under Hagrid's care before they could continue to take off. Everyone is eagerly looking forward to the holiday. Although there were roaring fires in the Ravenclaw Common Room and Great Hall, the drafty corridors became bitingly cold, and the classroom windows rattled in the biting wind. The worst thing is that Professor Snape's classes are all held in the underground classroom. A cloud of white mist forms in front of them when they breathe, so they have to get as close as possible to their hot cauldron. Recently, Professor Snape has been throwing tantrums in potions class, and his low pressure has caused all the little necromancers' potions experiments to go wrong. Someone has stolen precious materials from my storeroom. In a potions class, Snape was furious at them. I believe the thief is among you. If you let me know who he is, I will definitely tie him to the Whomping Willow. Many little necromancers celebrated this. They believed that the person who stole Snape's materials was a real hero, especially the little lions of Gryffindor, which intensified the conflict between them and Slytherin. I feel really sorry for those people, said Draco Malfoy during a potions class. They have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because their families don't want them. He looked at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. But those who really know Malfoy know that the real target of these words is another person, the person who makes Malfoy envious, jealous but out of reach. Yeting had always lived in the south in his last life, so he had not experienced really cold winters. In this life, he had lived in London for 10 years, and only then had he experienced a snowy winter. However, he did not stay at Hogwarts to spend this Christmas as Malfoy thought. This Christmas vacation, he plans to find a way to go to Russia, at this time, it was still called the Soviet Union, to travel around, make a fortune, and then take part of it to Gringotts to exchange it for gold galleons, so that he can have enough money to buy experimental materials in Diagon Alley. As for why he could make money in the Soviet Union? The answer is simple. On December 25, 1991, a far-reaching historical event occurred in Eastern Europe, that is, the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Pay attention to the key points and take the exam. The holidays at Hogwarts are different from those in other middle schools. In addition to summer vacation, they have about 20 days of holidays around Christmas and Easter, and the Christmas holiday starts in mid-December. Therefore, he had enough world to carry out a series of operations before the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, before the vacation begins, Yeting still has to deal with a little trouble from Hermione. Ever since Hagrid spilled the beans last time, Hermione has been very concerned about the name Nico Flamel. In her free time, she would always browse various history and biography books in the library, hoping to gain something. However, although she has browsed almost more than 100 books such as Great Necromancers of the 20th Century, List of Famous Contemporary Magicians, Major Discoveries of Modern Magic, Research on the Development of Modern Witchcraft, etc., these books not one of them mentions Nico Flamel's name. After doing enough useless work, she finally got discouraged and turned to seek help from the omnipotent Yeting. Hey, Yeting, please help me, she begged. I almost searched the entire library, but I just couldn't find this name. Oh, it's Nico Flamel again. Yeting shook his head helplessly. You haven't given up yet? You've spent too much time on this. I'm sorry. Hermione lowered her head in shame, then took Yeting's sleeve and shook it gently. Please, Yeting, help me, at least you can tell me Nico Flamel who it is, you must know who he is, right? Wow, since when did Hermione become so cute? This is too strange. Is this still the stubborn and powerful Hermione Granger? Although he was complaining madly in his heart, when Hermione, who was originally strong, really let go of her pride and asked Yeting for help, he still wavered. To be honest, who wouldn't be tempted when faced with the little lowly's cute face, watery eyes, and pitiful expression? At that moment, Yeting shamefully put down his moral integrity and gave Hermione a good introduction to Nico Flamel's information and his various achievements. Originally he wanted to keep it secret and postpone telling Hermione until after the vacation. However, his actions paid off immediately. His cheeks suddenly felt moist and soft, and the girl's sweet breath was refreshing. Yeting was caught off guard and was kissed secretly by Hermione. Nothing else, this is a reward. After saying these words, Hermione wanted to run away immediately, but Yeting easily caught her. You are so brave, you actually kissed me secretly. Yeting Xiang pretended to be angry, trying to tease the little girl. Kiss, just kiss, what do you want, what do you think? Hermione's face turned red and she lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Taking the initiative to kiss Yeting's cheek had completely exhausted her courage. Yeting smiled proudly and raised her chin with his fingers, pretending to be a dandy. Since you dare to take the initiative to kiss me, you have to pay the price. I will kiss you back 10 times. After saying that, he waited expectantly for Hermione's reaction. Unexpectedly, Hermione unexpectedly did not resist, but instead stammered, You can kiss me if you want. After finishing speaking, she closed her eyes and raised her head, as if she was looking forward to death. This reaction made Yeting not sure what to do. It stands to reason that with Hermione's character, if she was teased by Yeting like this, she would either be furious or be too embarrassed to speak, but now. No matter what, they already delivered it to your door, what else do you need to hesitation? For a moment, the only sound left in the quiet corner of the library was the two men's slightly heavy breathing. Chapter 53. The ambiguous atmosphere lasted for a while and then slowly subsided. Reason controlled Yeting's heart. Only then did he realize that his current physical age was only 11 years old, and Hermione was also 11 years old. As a result, their two 11-year-old children were hiding in the corner of the library, playing and kissing, and almost had a hot underscore kiss. Although he was definitely an adult in his own mind, the most important thing was that Hermione was the first to speak. Are all little girls today so precocious? It made him start to wonder if he was a Lolita. Oh, Lolita, the light of my life, the fire of my desire. My sin, my spirit. Stop it quickly, you can't think about it anymore. If you go any further, you will become a pervert. At least you have to wait until you are 16. Yeting thought wildly for a while and finally came to his senses. At this time, Hermione was also in a state of confusion. She couldn't believe that she had said such words and done such things just now, so she had no choice but to bury her head in Yeting's arms and pretend to be an ostrich. Ahem. Yeting cleared his throat and broke the silence first. Well, Hermione, I have something to tell you. In his arms, Hermione nodded imperceptibly. Yeting continued, I think that since you have been investigating Nico Flamel, on the one hand you want to know what treasures Dumbledore has hidden, but on the other hand you still suspect that Snape wanted to murder Harry. Steal the treasure. Hermione in her arms nodded again. Listen to me, Hermione, you can't doubt a professor just based on a bad impression. Yeting sighed and persuaded, before there is clear evidence, making unreasonable judgments about this kind of thing is a very serious accusation. I am not blaming you morally, but I want to tell you that doing so will make your investigation take a big detour and even cause irreversible consequences. Hearing this, Hermione's reaction suddenly became fierce. She left Yeting's arms, looked up at him, and retorted seriously, but Snape does often target Harry Potter. He is always in the devil's arms. He embarrassed Harry in the medicine class, and among the professors, he is the most suspect. As expected of Hermione, when faced with a debate, she never cared about whether it was ambiguous or not. This was the style of Miss Know-It-All. I know this. Snape really hates Harry. He has always been a mean person. I heard from Zhang that Snape was once named the champion of England's meanness championship. At this point, even Hermione laughed out loud. However, Yeting's words changed. However, this proves nothing. If you follow your logic, then whether it is covering the corridor with mud, or dripping Flobber's caterpillar juice into Gryffindor's lunch, or summoning Filch during a night out was all done by Snape because of all the professors he was the meanest to his students. No. No, these. Hermione was speechless. She didn't know how to refute, because this was her original logic. In fact, these things were all done by Peeves. Yeting said with a smile, but Peeves will definitely not conspire to steal Professor Dumbledore's treasures. We all know that pranks are his only hobby. So, he looked directly into Hermione's eyes. Do you still think that Snape plotted against Harry? You're right. Hermione thought for a while and finally admitted her mistake. I was too arbitrary. Yes, you are indeed too arbitrary. Yeting touched Hermione's cheek. You are Hermione Granger. You are smarter than anyone else. All the little necromancers, whether they are pure blood or mixed blood, can't learn magic as fast as you. You have always relied on logic to judge problems. Why this time? Just start following impressions and intuition like other people do. When Yeting said this, Hermione's face turned red, because Yeting knew her so well. He said everything correctly. She was originally a more rational person who did not doubt others easily. She bit her lip, whispered, yes, this time I am too prejudiced against Professor Snape, I will not doubt him easily again. Then, she said loudly like a declaration, but, I still think Snape is an annoying guy. Poor old bat, the student's bad impression of him cannot be changed no matter what. Yeting shrugged and agreed, I think so too. Not only is he gloomy, withdrawn, mean, and biased, but he also never washes his hair. Everyone hates him. Hermione nodded with satisfaction. Yeting sighed inaudibly. Girls are indeed difficult to coax. It is not easy to persuade her without making her angry. Fortunately, this is Hermione who is more reasonable. Suddenly, Hermione looked at Yeting curiously and asked him, so, the treasure Dumbledore hid is Nico Flamel's Sorcerer's Stone, right? Yes, I guess that's it. Yeting nodded, but he didn't forget to remind her, don't tell Harry Potter and Ron Weiss about Nico Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone. Len, this matter is too dangerous. Anyone who has the guts to steal from Dumbledore must be a powerful black necromancer. With their weak strength, they are not suitable to participate. In fact, it's not that it's not suitable to participate, but it's not that they know it yet. Yeting decided to reveal the news to Harry at the end of the semester. Only then would he have everything fully prepared, so that he could have a chance to fish in troubled waters and obtain the Philosopher's Stone. But there is no need to tell Hermione, who has the most sense of justice, this point for the time being. At least it will take a few semesters until she truly becomes one of her own. After reaching a consensus, the two went to the library together. On the way back to the lounge, Hermione suddenly asked curiously, you just said that Harry and Ron are of low strength and are not suitable to participate. What about me? Can I participate in this matter? Not bad, this time Hermione didn't desperately want to meddle in this nosy matter, and knew to ask him in advance. But with Hermione's character, she would definitely be unhappy if she wasn't allowed to participate. So Yeting raised his eyebrows and said proudly, you are you, they are them, although you are not strong either. Having said this, he glanced at Hermione, and the little girl's expression became much darker. He continued, but it doesn't matter, because I will protect you. After hearing these words, Hermione, who originally felt underestimated, suddenly had no complaints in her heart. Even if she was judged as having low strength, it didn't matter. She thought back to Halloween night and her first Quidditch lesson. Whenever she was in crisis, he would stand by her side and protect her from harm. He said he would protect me. Hermione was completely moved. She suddenly gave Yeting a big hug without saying a word. As a result, Yeting was confused. What is this for? Why is she hugging me? Did I say anything special? No matter, let's do it. Feeling Hermione's deep closeness and dependence on him, he held her in his arms. He left his original family and came to Otherworld alone. Here, he saw the legendary magic and had a great goal. But underneath it all, there is a deep loneliness. However, now he knew that he was finally no longer alone, no longer alone. There are still people who care about him and rely on him. Christmas is coming. Chapter 54. Today is the last day of stay at school, and students returning home will take the Hogwarts train back to King's Cross Station in London tomorrow. When Yeting came to the auditorium, Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy decorating Christmas decorations. He saw Hagrid walking in with a large fir tree in his arms. The needles were touched everywhere. Yes. Ah, Hagrid, we brought in the last tree too, put it in the corner over there, okay. Professor McGonagall said casually. The auditorium looked beautiful and spectacular. The walls were covered with hanging ribbons of holly and mistletoe, and a dozen towering Christmas trees were erected throughout the room. Some of the trees were hung with shiny icicles, and some were lit by hundreds of candles. Unfortunately, none of this has anything to do with him, although he himself is looking forward to staying at Hogwarts during the holidays, participating in Christmas parties, and tasting unique Christmas delicacies. To be honest, the delicacies at Hogwarts are always rich. It's delicious, far more than the local delicacies that British muggles find intolerable. But he also has his own plans to make money. On school days, leaving Hogwarts is quite a hassle. Not only do you have to travel a long distance, Hogwarts cannot use apparition, but you also have to avoid the portraits, statues, ghosts, and professors in the castle, as well as the monitoring of the creatures in the Forbidden Forest. In addition, he had to return before the next morning, which was completely making things difficult for others. Therefore, the Christmas holiday is his only opportunity. He has missed the opportunity to short the yen under the Plaza Accord in Japan and short oil during the Gulf War at the beginning of the year. Next year, Soros will be short the pound after school starts in September. It's too late, all major events like the disintegration of the Soviet Union must be grasped. Early the next morning, he boarded the Hogwarts Express and embarked on his journey back to London. His three female friends, Hermione Granger, Cho Chang, and Penelope Cravat, were not staying at school during the holidays, so at King's Cross Station, he and the three of them hugged each other goodbye. "Don't forget to reply to us," Penelope said to him reluctantly. "I know you don't have an owl, but I will write you a letter and a Christmas gift." "Definitely, I will remember it." Yeting smiled and nodded, feeling a little warm in his heart. Finally, each of the three girls secretly gave him a kiss when no one was looking. Yeting was touched and helpless by this, and felt a little excited and relieved in his heart. It seems that he is destined to be a sinful man, but whatever. After bidding farewell to the three girls, Yeting was ready to get down to business. For this operation, he had made sufficient preparations: a large dose of petrification potion, the antidote to the petrification potion, and a whole cauldron of semi-finished polyjuice potion. It was he and Oriana who infiltrated Snape some time ago. S personal storage room, stole the medicinal ingredients, and then created the potions in the room of requirement. Originally, the petrification potion was completely redundant. After all, there was still the existence of the petrification curse. However, Yeting felt that his magic power was not strong enough and his mastery of the petrification spell was not deep enough, so the petrification spell did not last long enough, so he had to use potions to replace the effect of the spell. These were shrunk by a shrinking spell and hidden in the pockets of his cloak. After leaving King's Cross Station, he did not return to Wu's orphanage immediately, but went directly to London Airport. Relying on the confusion spell and the disembodiment spell, he got on a plane bound for New York, USA. Definitely, due to the existence of trace silk, underage necromancers who use magic spells outside the school will be censed by the Ministry of Magic, and then the young necromancer who uses the magic spell will receive a letter warning from the Ministry of Magic. In serious cases, it may even cause horror come to your door. However, Zhongxi is not without flaws. According to Yeting's analysis, Zhongxi cannot sense which necromancer used magic. Its principle is to sense the position of the necromancer when it uses magic. When little necromancers live in Muggle families, because the locations of the little necromancers are quite scattered, and their parents are not magical, it is easy for the Ministry of Magic to determine the identity of the offender through the home addresses of the little necromancers. And when the little necromancer who violates the rules of using magic spells is in a necromancer family, it is not that easy to determine the identity of the little necromancer through traces, but it doesn't matter, because the necromancer law stipulates that for minor necromancers from such families, they violate the rules. The use of magic must be supervised by parents. The reason why Yeting was able to come to this conclusion was that the evidence came from the situation in the original book when Harry Potter was framed during the first semester summer vacation. Dobby was obviously the one who used magic, but the Ministry of Magic insisted that it was Harry who used magic, and asked him warning letters were sent. This proves that the Ministry of Magic can only confirm the location and not the user. Now, Yeting was already prepared. The plane he chose to get on was a plane that was about to depart, so when the Aurors arrived at the airport through apparition, the plane had already taken off, and Yeting had already flown far away from the crime scene. The Aurors looked around blankly at the airport, but found nothing. As a result, the nearby Muggles were shocked by their sudden appearance. Who would have thought that underage necromancers would dare to use magic in public? In the incidents they handled in the past, because they were in the Muggle world, the little necromancers would often secretly cast spells in secret places to prevent others from being discovered as monsters. However, after the Aurors appeared directly at the scene of the incident through apparition, they the perpetrator can be caught red-handed. But this time they encountered an accident. Some Muggles thought they were experiencing hallucinations, some were so frightened that they ran away, and some excitedly came forward to ask questions. If there were smartphones in this era, pictures of Aurors. The video has long appeared on social media and has been watched by Muggle netizens. Next is a large-scale cleansing of the Oblivion Curse. It is estimated that the Minister of Magic will also inform the British Prime Minister to cooperate in controlling the fishing boat. After all, the place where the accident occurred was the waiting room of the airport, and there was too much traffic here. There may be witnesses who have already left by plane. If the incident is not properly handled and the incident is allowed to escalate, there may be one more famous unsolved mystery in the world. As for Yeting, he didn't know how much trouble his piece of chicken feathers had brought to the Ministry of Magic and the British government. At the moment, he was on his way to New York. Now he can be regarded as a fish leaping in the sea, and a bird can fly in the sky, because the trace silk can only be effective in the United Kingdom, that is to say, after he leaves the country, he can use magic at will, and the British Ministry of Magic has no control over him. As for the Ministry of Magic in other countries, at least there is no international practice of sharing information about traces. The flight lasted 8 hours, and the sky was already dark when the plane arrived in New York. But Yeting did not immediately deal with trivial matters such as finding a place to live or settling dinner. He was very pressed for time now. The feast of the disintegration of the Soviet Union was about to begin, and most people had already entered, so he had to hurry up. First of all, the first step is to solve the identity problem. He definitely cannot do this through his own identity, because he is too young and has no original funds. Even if he has a blank wolf method, he has nowhere to start. His solution is to find a person with enough status to launch his plan. This person must be engaged in financial work, have sufficient credit and property, and should be single or living alone. This is not to say that Yeting wants to embezzle other people's property. He is not that shameless. He feels that using magic to rob Muggles has neither technical content nor his identity. How can the future Dharma god rob mortals? The reason why he wants to choose such a person is because he needs a loan. Making money through loans is his best choice. As for being single and living alone, it is even simpler. You only need to use magic to get the target himself. Putting it into a family at the same time and forging their memories will be a big trouble. Not many people will believe in group hallucinations. And if you want to find such a single financial worker with credibility and property, the best place is Wall Street in New York. Chapter 55. Wall Street is the name of a street in Manhattan, New York City. It is only 1/3 of a mile long and 11 meters wide. The street is narrow and short, but it is famous all over the world as the financial center of the United States. The management offices of banks, insurance, shipping, railways and other companies established by the American Morgan Chable, Rockefeller Oil King and DuPont Consortium are concentrated here. The famous New York Stock Exchange is also here, and it is still the headquarters of several major exchanges, such as NASDAQ, American Stock Exchange, New York Futures Exchange, etc. There are a large number of financial practitioners here, traders, bankers, managers, etc. Yeting easily found a suitable target here. Charles Murphy was born in 1961. He entered Columbia University at the age of 16 and later received law and business degrees from Harvard University and MIT. He currently works for Morgan Stanley, as well as for Goldman Sachs Group, experience in serving the world's largest banks such as Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse Group AG. He is single and has millions of dollars in assets to his name. This is the most qualified target that Yeting can find in a short period of time. On the day Yeting found him, Charles had just finished handing over work and was about to start his Christmas vacation. There is no one more suitable than him. Yeting cast a disillusionment spell on himself and followed him all the way to his apartment, This was just Charles's property near Wall Street, and he also had a small villa on Long Island. Yeting waited at the door of his apartment until 1 o'clock in the morning. After making sure that there were no bystanders or surveillance cameras around, he took out his wand and pointed lightly at the door. The Ilajo cave opens. The door opened in response, and Yeting walked into the apartment quietly. Although the lights were not turned on, Yeting could have a clear view of the luxurious apartment through the light outside the window. Huge amounts of fish tanks, ornate rugs, shelves full of famous wines, and antiques and crafts from around the world all reflect the wealth of its owners. He is worthy of being a wealthy man on Wall Street. Yeting smiled slightly, closed the door smoothly, and then patrolled back and forth in this apartment. For a period of time in the future, this place will belong to him. This is just a pun. When Yeting came to Charles's bedroom, the owner of the room was still sleeping soundly, and there was a half-empty glass of red wine on the bedside. However, just to be on the safe side, Yeting still cast a coma spell on him to prevent him from waking up due to pain, and then pulled out a lot of hair from his head. Then, he took out his cauldron, which was filled with polyjuice potion, and Yeting put the hair of Charles he had just obtained into it. The decoction made a loud noise, like a pot of boiling water, and was foaming vigorously. After a second, it turned an ugly off-white color. Evil, the essence of Mr. Charles Murphy. Yeting poured himself a cup of grey decoction and looked at it with disgust. Should I try another method? Yes, dear father, turning yourself into another person is not an interesting choice. You obviously have unparalleled beauty, why do you want to become a bad old man? Oriana on the side agreed. Nodded. In this apartment, she no longer needs to maintain the file size of her toys and has regained her original size. Hearing Oriana's suggestion, Yeting curled his lips and said, "Hey, I'm just 30 years old, in my prime, so why am I so bad for an old man? Also, what is unparalleled beauty? Although I'm happy you said that, but I don't care, this guy is just a bad old man compared to my father." Oriana shook her head reluctantly, and her mechanical female voice sounded strangely cute. Hearing Oriana's words, Yeting couldn't help but secretly rejoice, but he pretended to be helpless and said, okay, but my age in my 2 lifetimes combined seems to be older than him. Father, you will always be 18 years old. What a lovely daughter. Forget it, just bear with it. Looking at the turbid grey-white potion, it took Yeting a long time to muster the courage to drink it in one gulp. It tasted like overcooked cabbage. Immediately, Yeting's internal organs began to churn, as if he had just swallowed several live snakes. Suddenly, a burning sensation spread rapidly from his stomach throughout his body, reaching to his fingers and toes. Then there was a terrible melting sensation, as if his skin was bubbling like hot wax. He watched as his hands began to grow in size, his fingers thickening, his nails widening, his knuckles bulging out like bolts. His shoulders began to stretch, causing him unbearable pain. The pinprick pain in his forehead told him that the hair was spreading towards his eyebrows, his chest was swelling, his thighs were lengthening, and even his feet were getting bigger. 2 laps. Fortunately, he had enough foresight to change into loose pajamas before drinking the decoction, otherwise his shirt, trousers, and leather shoes would be bursting. At his feet, Fija was so frightened that he jumped far away. It took him a while to react. She walked around Yeting and sniffed east and west. Finally, she was able to confirm that Yeting was still the same Yeting, so she threw herself into Yeting's arms like a wronged child. "You scared me just now, touch me quickly, or I won't forgive you," that's what she meant. Oriana joked nearby and dubbed Fijo's behavior. And she herself poked Yeting curiously, trying to see how he was different from before. "It's amazing. It's completely different. There is no trace of the original." She admired the effect of the polyjuice potion. "Except for the soul, my father has become a completely different person." Even Fija nodded in agreement. "Yes, polyjuice potion is so magical," Yeting said. His voice was no longer magnetic and pleasant, but became deeper and rougher. That was Charles's voice. "Polyjuice potion probably changes one person into another person at the genetic level. If I go for a DNA test now, the doctor will never find the difference between me and Charles himself." The transformation effect of polyjuice potion lasted about 2 hours, which meant that he had to take polyjuice potion once every 2 hours in front of outsiders in order to maintain his transformation. But the decoction he brewed was large enough to last him for 2 weeks. The next step is to obtain Charles's memory so that he can accurately imitate Charles's words and actions to prevent any flaws from being discovered. Although this financial executive attended college at a young age and could be regarded as a highly intelligent person, he was not a figure like Snape after all. He knew nothing about occlumency. Yeting could easily use legilimency to obtain his memory. He spent 4 or 5 hours browsing these memories. In these memories, he not only got a general understanding of Charles's life and his living habits, but also learned Charles's knowledge and operating methods of finance, although it was only a cursory glance, but it's enough for Yeting to use. After all, his goal is to profit from the disintegration of the Soviet Union. This does not require precise judgment or exquisite operations. It is enough to keep up with the general trend and make good use of historical knowledge. Finally, he poured a large glass of the special concentrated petrifying potion into poor Charles's mouth. Charles's body immediately became stiff. This dose can ensure that he remains petrified for a long time, and he will never return to normal before taking the potion to remove petrification. The advantage of the petrified state is that the petrified person will remain in the same state, just like a real stone, without any change, until the petrification is lifted, and the petrified person will not have the slightest memory during this period. In this case, he could safely leave Charles in the apartment and travel to Eastern Europe without worrying about whether Charles would die of hunger or thirst in the next 2 weeks. Now, Yeting is ready to start his journey to wealth at any time. Chapter 56. This trip to Eastern Europe went smoothly. When Yeting returned to New York, Charles Murphy's home, nearly 2 weeks had passed since Christmas, and his vacation was about to end. This journey was very fruitful for him. After witnessing the fall of the Red Giant with his own eyes, he and other Western financial institutions feasted on the corpse of the giant, so happily. In fact, his operation was not complicated. In the Soviet Union, as Charles, he used sufficient assets as collateral to lend a large sum of rubles, about 5 million rubles, in the Soviet bank, and agreed to deliver it in US dollars. And then repay the debt in rubles. Definitely, he would have to use special means such as confusion spells and misdirection spells. Otherwise, as an individual, he would not be able to compete with formal financial institutions in this regard. He then received about $5.5 million in cash. The next step is to wait. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev announced his resignation as President of the Soviet Union. On December 26, the Soviet Union disintegrated, and the Russian Federation became the sole successor to the Soviet Union. All overseas properties, deposits, diplomatic institutions, embassies and consulates of the former Soviet Union will be taken over by Russia. The Soviet Union disintegrated and split into 15 countries, the 3 East Slavic countries, the 3 Baltic countries, the 5 Central Asian countries, the 3 Transcaucasian countries, and Moldova. An era is over. After that, the ruble plummeted 4 to 5 times within a week. In other words, today's $5.5 million is equivalent to more than 20 million rubles, and he only needs to spend 5 million of it for repayment. The rest is pure profit. This is simply like robbing a bank. No, robbing a bank is not as profitable as this. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Russia was left with only an empty shell. It was not without reason. The wealth accumulated by the Soviet Union over the past decades was swept away by Western bankers. If Yeting had enough time, he could wait a few more months. At that time, the inflation rate in Russia was as high as 2,000%. In other words, these $5.5 million would be equivalent to hundreds of millions of rubles in a few months. He can still earn more. Unfortunately, what he lacks now is time. However, a 20-fold drop increased his gain by at most a quarter, which is equivalent to about $1 million. Although this money seems to be a lot, now he has earned more than $4 million. It was enough for him to spend a while. There was no need to spend time and energy learning magic for this extra million. Then, he conducted a sweep in Russian stores and returned home with a full load. Due to the economic crisis, Russia's luxury goods, handicrafts and other industries are in depression. Everyone doesn't even have money to eat, so where can they spend their money? This made Yeting cheaper. He used the US dollars he had to buy a lot of local specialties and souvenirs at low prices. After all, in this case, the US dollar maintains its value better than the ruble. Merchants would rather lose a little and receive US dollars instead of the ruble, which may depreciate at any time. Now, Yeting, who had returned from victory, and Oriana tidied up Charles Murphy's home together, made some arrangements, and then poured the anti-petrification potion into his mouth. Poor Charles finally returned to his pre-petrified state, but he still didn't wake up. He was hit by Yeting's coma spell before he was petrified, so it would take a while before he could be lifted from the coma. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yeting randomly fabricated some memories of a vacation in Eastern Europe and stuffed them into Charles's mind. Since these memories were based on Yeting's own personal experience, they were authentic enough. Then he cast the Confusion Curse, and the Forgetting Curse on Charles in succession. In this case, Charles's mind would be in chaos. Within a week he will become forgetful, so that he will no longer doubt the fragments of memory. To increase credibility, Yeting also placed a half bottle of vodka and half burnt leaves in the living room. These are easy to get in the United States. He also left many Eastern European specialties to Charles. When Charles wakes up, he will feel that his memory is chaos, with only some fragments of traveling in Eastern Europe. But combined with the souvenirs, the vodka, and leaves on the table, he will come to the conclusion on his own: he did go to Eastern Europe. I went on vacation, but after returning to New York, my memory was confused due to alcoholism and overdose of fly leaves, and I forgot many specific details. If he wants to further verify, then his flight tickets, consumption records, small amount ruble exchange records, etc. can all prove that he has indeed been to Eastern Europe. After all, these are all things Yeting put in his face and used his identity. What you do cannot be faked at all. As for the operations of mortgage loans and shorting the ruble, since they were entirely done in Soviet banks, there are no records in New York. And Yeting had already completely settled the matter when he left Russia. Unless Charles came to Russia in person, accurately found the bank, and found the transaction in the bank's records, all the people involved in the transaction were later arrested. A forgetting spell was cast, but electronic records and written records were left behind, otherwise he would never know in his life that he himself had done such a big job in Russia. As for whether he will be targeted by the KGB, held accountable by the Russian government, or refused entry, that is none of Yeting's business. When Yeting returned to Wu's orphanage, there were only 2 days before the end of the vacation. Returning to the orphanage and entering the familiar room, Yeting was filled with emotions for a moment. 4 months ago, he was still an ordinary person, dreaming of becoming a big entrepreneur and the richest man in the world. But now, 4 months later, I have entered the other side of the world and become a real necromancer. Oriana looked around his room curiously, wanting to take a good look at the place where her dearest father once lived. Fija was jumping up and down on the bed excitedly. She also missed this former home. Yeting found that his room was already filled with Christmas gifts, almost all of which were sent to him by friends he met at Hogwarts, definitely, as well as his huge fan base. Since Yeting spent a lot of time reading books in the public library and the library in the Ravenclaw Lounge when he was at Hogwarts, everyone felt that books were the best gift for Yeting. He received about 60 books, and even the professors also sent him some more advanced magic books. These books were neatly piled on the floor, more than 20 of them were written by Gilderoy Law. Hart's book. It seems that this guy is quite good at deceiving little girls. Most members of the fan club gave him chocolates and gift cards. There were almost 200 chocolates, enough to last him for a year, and more than 100 gift cards. Definitely, Yeting would never dare to eat these chocolates easily, because he might not know which chocolate would have a love agent added to it. Among the chocolates he received from Elle when he was injured, 4 or 5 chocolates had a love agent added to them. Fortunately, he didn't eat any of it. There were also other gifts, such as Roger giving him a statue of Alasdair Maddock, the ace chaser of the Montrose Magpies, the most successful team in the league. A golfer and Roger's most admired player, Zhang Chu gave him a set of posters of the Tate Hill Tornadoes. She is a loyal fan of this team. Hermione gave him a shorthand quill. Penelope she gave him a hand-knitted scarf. According to her roommate, she had been secretly preparing this scarf a month ago, but she neither knitted the scarf outside the dormitory nor let her roommate use it. This was told, and Dumbledore gave him a package of disgusting cockroach dumplings. Seeing this unexpectedly large pile of gifts, Yeting was both happy and distressed. Fortunately, this time, he made a fortune in Russia and bought enough specialties and souvenirs before returning. It would be just enough to use them all as a return gift. In addition, these souvenirs can also be used as proof that he is traveling. He also found several unanswered letters from Zhangqiu, Hermione, and Pinello among the gifts, thinking that he had made an appointment with them during the holiday before parting. Yeting felt a headache after writing letters, hoping that these souvenirs from Russia could quell their dissatisfaction. Chapter 57. On the last day of the Christmas vacation, Yeting came to Gringotts in Diagon Alley alone early in the morning. He wanted to exchange a large amount of US dollars into gold galleons. In Gringotts, the exchange ratio between gold galleons and British pounds was 1:5, and Yeting spent $500,000 to exchange for galleons, which meant that he could exchange it for almost 80,000 gold galleons. Faced with such a large transaction, the young goblin in front of the counter obviously couldn't make the decision. He hurriedly called a very old goblin. His face was wrinkled like an orange peel that had been left for a long time, and his voice was sharp and astringent. "I've never seen such a big deal since I started working at Gringotts when I was young." Facing the check for $500,000, the old goblin burst out with energy that belied his age, and there was money in his eyes. "Ray of light, are you sure you want to exchange everything into gold galleons?" "Definitely." Yeting handed over the check impatiently. When he took the check, the old goblin's hands couldn't help but tremble. At that moment, he even had the idea of operating away immediately after receiving the check. Definitely, he couldn't really do this, because before he could get rid of the trace and cash the check, Yeting could void the check with just one phone call. Sometimes, Yeting feels strange about the financial system of the magical world. Although $500,000 is a large amount of money in the Muggle world, it is just a drop in the bucket for the real rich. But for a necromancer, this $500,000, that is, 80,000 gold galleons, is equivalent to a huge sum of a fortune. The most Harry Potter's parents left to Harry was tens of thousands of gold galleons, but this did not include the property owned by James Potter as the heir to a pure-blood family in the necromancer world, and the Potter family was in the pure-blood world. The family is considered quite wealthy. In other words, even the biggest rich man in the necromancer world is at the level of an ordinary rich person in the Muggle world, and the population of the necromancer world is much lower than that of the Muggle world. So why has the economy of the necromancer world been so poor for so many years? No crash? As long as any rich Muggle child becomes a necromancer, and then exchanges 1 to 200 million pounds into gold galleons, and then spends all of it, there will be serious inflation in the entire necromancer world. He even doubts that Gringotts can even afford it. So many galleons. Definitely, 1 or 200 million pounds in 1991 is worth much more than 1 or 200 million pounds 2 or 3 decades later. However, with the constant increase in Muggle productivity, even if the Muggle currency has been devaluing, the wealth owned by Muggles is still growing at a rate far exceeding that of the necromancer world. In another 10 or 20 years, there will be many more wealthy people in the Muggle world who can exchange 1 to 200 million gold galleons in one go than now. At that time, the possibility of a financial crisis in the necromancer world will also be much greater. Nowadays, finance in the necromancer world is normal. The biggest reason is just concealment and closedness. This is like the financial system of Japan, which was relatively closed at that time. Because the capital of Japan can freely enter and exit foreign markets, foreign funds cannot enter freely ***, so the international financial crisis has had little impact on Star. After carefully collecting the check, the old goblin began to sell Gringotts' treasury to Yeting. "Dear sir, you have a lot of wealth, but you can't really take all 80,000 gold galleons with you. Wear it. I sincerely recommend Gringotts' vault to you. Gringotts can provide you with the safest and highest quality savings service. No one except you can take out a nat from the vault, and our interest rates are also higher than Muggle banks. The cheapest vault is only 500 galleons. If you are willing to pay 10,000 galleons, your vault will be protected by our highest standards, including a sphinx or fire dragon as an anti-theft measure." The old goblin chattered a lot, and it was hard to imagine that just now he looked old and dying. Yeting really couldn't stand his constant sales pitch. He suspected that if he didn't shut up this guy, the old man might even talk about financial services and fixed investment funds. Plus, he really needed to save. So he immediately agreed to spend 10,000 galleons to buy the most expensive vault, and now his money was lying in the deepest part of Gringotts together with the oldest families in the necromancer world. When leaving Gringotts, Yeting received a dragon skin bag containing 5,000 gold galleons, a key to the vault, a personal seal, a Gringotts checkbook and a badge. The checkbook and seal are used for large purchases, while the badge is a symbol of status as a distinguished customer of Gringotts. After arriving in Diagon Alley, Yeting was finally able to make a large purchase as he wished. He had been waiting for this day since the purchase before the start of school. He bought a ring made of platinum and fairy silver, similar to a ring, the king's mithril, the material from which Gryffindor's sword is made, a foldable and self-stirring cauldron, a platinum balance and a telescope, several sets of crystal test tubes, a set of marble necromancers, large quantities of various precious magical materials, and lots of expensive cat food. Even with the shrinking spell, his backpack was still full. Definitely, he didn't buy any more books. First of all, Hogwarts definitely has much more books than Flourish and Blots. Secondly, Yeting feels that most of the books that can be bought have the opportunity to be given to him as gifts by his fan group. As far as he knows, his fan group has a public book list that all members of the fan group give to him. His books will be included in the book list to avoid repeated gifts. Thirdly, most of the books written by necromancers are flashy and random and lack system and logic. Yeting is currently doing a job in his spare time, which is to systematically compile the knowledge of necromancers through Muggle academic papers. Summarize. The final result is probably a major work like the Oxford Encyclopedia or the academic version of magic such as Yongle Dedayan and Sakukwanchu. With such works, there is no need for him to collect so many necromancer academic books. Finally, he went to Mrs. Malkin and ordered 7 or 8 sets of clothing based on the styles of the Chaldean uniforms in FGO, the Atlas Academy uniforms, the Polar Chaldean uniforms, etc., and then he ended the purchase. Sure enough, shopping and consumption is not a privilege for girls. In fact, boys will also enjoy this process as long as they have the opportunity. Immediately afterwards, he rushed to King's Cross Station without stopping and boarded the train to Hogwarts. Definitely, he had to coax the 3 girls who were angry because of the missed communication on the train. Fortunately, the souvenirs he gave were quite impressive. For Hermione, an amber necklace wrapped with a beetle. A pair of enamel earrings were given to Zhangqiu, and a gorgeous Faberge egg was given to Senior Pinello. Girls are indeed like dragon, creatures with a natural affinity for shiny things. Such a gift easily won their favor. The 3 girls' families are all fairly well off, otherwise they would not dare to accept such a gift. Again, in addition, Yeting cleverly changed the topic to the scenery of Russia and the experience of the disintegration of the Soviet Union, which successfully aroused their interest, and they got through this. After a pleasant train journey, they returned to Hogwarts. Chapter 58. After returning to school, the first Quidditch match at Hogwarts was Ravenclaw vs Slytherin. Ravenclaw's genius and male god faced off against Slytherin, who hated Muggles the most. The excitement of the competition is terrifying. Before the game, Malfoy blocked Yeting in the corridor. Behind him were Crabbe and Goyle, who were also going to watch the game and cheer for the Slytherin team. "Get out of the way, you Ravenclaw pretty boy," Malfoy shrilled provocatively at Yeting, "or are you just too impatient to be ready to accept the insult on the court in front of your lovers? Be careful. Broke your leg." After saying this, he laughed with what he thought was humorous, and his 2 followers also laughed exaggeratedly, as if someone was forcing them with a knife. Yeting shook his head speechlessly. This kind of child's trick made him feel very ridiculous. A dude like Malfoy could only talk in front of him. Once he played it for real, he would definitely be intimidated. However, although he was not angry, there were certainly people who were angry for him. "You're jealous, Malfoy." Next to Yeting, Hermione said sharply and sarcastically, "You are neither liked by girls nor can you join the Quidditch team. You can only say some mean words on the sidelines." Her words stung Malfoy sharply, and he became a little angry and his face turned ugly. "No one asked for your opinion, you stinking little mudblood," he said to Hermione harshly. "Get out of here with your mistress." This sentence immediately caused an explosive reaction. Zhangqiu stared at him angrily and warned, "How dare you, shut up." However, the one who had the biggest reaction was Yeting, who coldly announced to him, "You will pay the price for these words." At that moment, his cold aura made Malfoy feel as if he was naked in the ice and snow, and he couldn't help but shudder. Yeting pulled out his wand and pointed it at Malfoy. He was immediately turned into a white mouse, running around on the ground in a panic. Crabbe and Goyle shouted and rushed towards Yeting, but he did not dodge or dodge, but pointed at them both with his wand. Malfoy's 2 big followers immediately turned into mice. Crabbe transformed into a large, fat brown mouse, and Goyle transformed into a stocky black mouse. Yeting casually broke off a dead branch and turned it into a large iron cage. Then he used a floating spell to throw all 3 panicked rats in, and then hung the cage on the ceiling of the corridor, letting the 3 rats do whatever they wanted, climbing around in the cage. Finally, Yeting also told Fiju, "Fiju, call all your friends and ask them to teach these 3 hooligans how to be a good student." Hearing his words, the nearby necromancers couldn't help but shudder. Should Fiju's friends educate him? Who is Fiju? The eldest sister of all the cats in Hogwarts, what kind of friends can she call? Asking a cat to deal with 3 little necromancers that turn into mice is going to scare people into having a heart attack. The genius of Ravenclaw actually has such a terrifying side, so don't mess with him. This is what the boys think. But the girls' reactions were completely different. Instead of thinking that Yeting was ruthless, they admired him even more. Yeting is so cool. What a secure man. It's so romantic to get angry and fight because your female partner was insulted. Why does that nerd get his favor? It would be nice if I was the one being called a mudblood. After leaving the trio, on the way to the competition venue, Hermione looked at Yeting curiously and asked, "Are you okay now? Why were you so angry just now?" Before Yeting could speak, Zhangqiu interrupted sourly, "Haven't you seen it yet? He is venting his anger on you right now. Malfoy insulted you." But Hermione still couldn't understand, and she looked a little worried. "I know Malfoy said some rude words, but there is no need to go to this point. It is against school rules to use magic in the corridor, just because he said something about me. What's that word called? It's a mudblood." Yeting took over the conversation, sighed, and whispered, "These words are very vicious. This is the most insulting thing he can think of. Mudblood is a slanderous name for Muggle-born people. I don't care if he said that, but he actually said such things to you, to a girl. So you can't help but pity her, right?" Zhangqiu accused angrily, "This is using magic on classmates in the corridor, and the target is Snape's protégé. Do you think that eccentric old bat will? What's your reaction? He'll put you in solitary confinement for a month. He's always unhappy with you, can't you just bear it? Even for yourself. So I have to watch him scold or sneer at him." Yeting shook his head, "I won't quarrel with him. That would make me look as stupid as him. The best way to deal with such a person is to just take action. If you tolerate him, you will find that he will become as annoying as a fly, because although he can't do anything to you, he will keep annoying you. Oh, I forgot, you necromancers never bothered by flies, replace the flies with gnomes in your garden." Finally, he added proudly, "Besides, Snape can't do anything to me. If he puts me in solitary confinement for less than 3 days, he will have to ask me out. You just have to wait and see." Hearing him describe Malfoy as a goblin, Hermione and Zhangqiu both burst into laughter. After finally stopping laughing, Zhangqiu turned to Hermione and said, "Listening to what he said, I suddenly felt that it made sense. Some necromancers, like the Malfoy family, always feel that they are superior to others because they are so-called a pure blood. Actually, the rest of us know it doesn't matter at all. Look at Neville Barton, he's a pure blood, but he can't even put the cauldron in the right place." Yeting also proudly echoed, "They haven't invented the magic spell that our Hermione can't use yet." Hermione's face turned red with embarrassment. Zhangqiu frowned and said to Hermione seriously, "Mudblood is indeed an unpleasant name, as it means dirty and inferior blood. But these are all crazy words. Most necromancers nowadays are of mixed blood. If we didn't intermarry with Muggles, we would have become extinct a long time ago." Hearing this, Hermione's expression became gentle. She looked at Yeting and said in a gentle voice that was completely unlike him, "Thank you." "Don't thank him," Zhangqiu complained angrily, "he is causing trouble for himself. I heard that Draco Malfoy's father, Lucius Malfoy, is the school director, and he used to be a Death Eater. If he hears that his son was turned into a mouse and used it to tease cats, he will definitely come to trouble you. What will you do then?" When she said this, she was completely facing Yeting, and her voice was an octave higher. However, Yeting was not angry because of this. He responded calmly, "It doesn't matter. Lucius Malfoy can't do anything to me. At most, he proposed to expel me at the school board meeting, but Dumbledore, I won't agree to that." Hearing what he said, Zhangqiu sighed and said helplessly, "It's good that you know what's going on. Anyway, I won't be the unlucky one then. Why should I worry so much? You'll still treat me as nosy. How could it be?" Yeting gently touched her smooth black hair, "I know you are just worried about me, but a boy should stand up to protect his girl at this time, right? If the one who is insulted, if I were you, I would do the same thing his girl, is that what you said?" Yeting didn't know that his casual words hit the softest parts of the two girls' hearts at the same time. The scene immediately fell silent. The girls were so moved that they involuntarily saved one of his arms. Although he is just a straight man, he can sometimes say some devastating words. It's really gratifying. Chapter 59. In this match between Ravenclaw and Slytherin, Yeting seemed to be working very hard. In order to deal with the highly skilled Yeting, Flint chose to use the tactics of fouling and hitting people. Every Slytherin player was waiting for an opportunity to knock Yeting off his broomstick. But he didn't show any weakness at all. Instead, he faced off against the Slytherin players time and time again. Whenever his opponent maliciously bumped into him, Yeting would never dodge. He did not use his flight skills at all, as if to vent, choosing to engage in physical confrontation with his opponents every time. Zhang Qiu on the field and Hermione in the stands could see that Yeting was deliberately seeking revenge. For a long time, the purists of Slytherin have been at odds with the Muggle-born geniuses Yeting and Hermione, and the likes of Malfoy have openly embarrassed them. For a long time, Yeting had been dealing with them with a joke-like attitude, but what Malfoy did before the game completely ignited his dissatisfaction, so Yeting let go of his hands and feet in this game, intending to give the little snakes a lesson. Therefore, the result of every confrontation was that either the Slytherin players gave in and turned early to make way for Yeting, or the two collided and Yeting used his strong physical fitness and flight skills to stabilize the broom. His opponents were either knocked away or lost control of their brooms. Even Flint Marcus, who was tall and considered to have troll blood, couldn't do anything to him. Whenever he wanted to hit Yeting from the side, Yeting would immediately launch a firm counterattack against him. Every time he collided with Yeting, Flint felt as if he had bumped into a flight fire dragon. While the other party was shaking him, he was knocked far away. After 3 consecutive attempts, he was so sore from being hit that he could barely hold on to the broom. In the end, the Slytherin team paid the price for their tactics. 2 players were knocked off their broomsticks and others were knocked dazed. This kind of Slytherin was no match for Ravenclaw, who had a tacit cooperation and sharp tactics. Ravenclaw was defeated by Ravenclaw with a score of 240 points to 0, they didn't even get a point. And Ravenclaw seeker Zhang Qiu also caught the golden snitch on the field for the first time. This is of course because her skills have greatly improved under Yeting's training, but another reason is that Slytherin seeker Higgins was hit by Yeting so hard that he couldn't hold the broom and could not compete with her, otherwise it would take twice as long to find and catch the golden snitch. However, the most unfortunate thing is that every time a foul was committed, it was the Slytherin players who took the initiative, and Yeting just retaliated passively, so the Slytherins were completely speechless and could only suffer this dumb loss. If it weren't for Huo Mrs. Chi considered that Slytherin was the loser in the collision, so there were no extra free throws, and Ravenclaw could add another 100 points to her score. After the game, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff all cheered. They have always hated Slytherin's unscrupulous game strategies, but there is always nothing they can do against them. Now Yeting can face them head-on and impose sanctions, which makes him a hero in the minds of the young necromancers in the 3 colleges. As for the Slytherin snakes, their reaction was very funny. First, the college was divided into 2 factions. The boys' side and cursed Yeting, while the girls began to support Yeting. Slytherins have a side of worshipping power. Then, the little snakes were defeated in the debate with other colleges, because they were the initiators of all the fouls, and they were the unlucky ones, neither taking advantage nor being unreasonable. It's like losing his wife and losing his troops. Their dean, Professor Snape, had a terrifyingly dark face. Everyone saw that he left the audience angrily in the middle of the game. After the game, what the young necromancers most often discussed was Yeting's exaggerated performance of knocking all the Slytherin players down when facing Slytherin's foul tactics. I can't believe it. Even Flint was knocked away by him. At that time, I thought it was Hagrid riding on the broom. Ron babbled to Harry on the way back to the lounge from the playing field. Sighing, that guy is 2 times bigger than him. What was it like the last time you were hit by Flint? Flint is indeed as strong as a troll, Harry frowned. It was indeed not a pleasant memory. I felt like a weak little rabbit. Or a little squirrel. Whatever. So, how did he do it? Ron asked curiously, did he cast some mysterious magic on himself? Or did he drink a potion made from the blood of the troll? You know, he subdued it on Halloween a giant monster. At that time he definitely had a chance to take something from the giant monster. In fact, others also had this question about Yeting, and Senior Pinello excitedly blocked him at the door of the Ravenclaw lounge after the game and asked him this question. 100 push UPS, 100 sit UPS, 100 squats, 10 kilometers of long distance running, just keep doing it every day. This was Yeting's answer. Are you kidding? Pinello crossed her arms, which made her graceful curves more prominent. and cast a suspicious look at him. Just like this, can you become stronger than Flint? But you don't even look half as heavy as him. Actually, Flint weighs 170 pounds, and my current weight is 100 pounds, which is more than half of his weight. Yeting retorted casually, and whether you are strong or not does not only depend on when it comes to weight, people are different, and muscles are different from muscle to muscle. Yeting's answer surprised Pinello. What? How do you know his weight? It was definitely calculated. Combining his flight speed at the time, my own flight speed, my weight, and the force felt during the impact, his weight can be calculated. This is Muggle knowledge and a very simple physical calculation. Yeting explained calmly, looking relaxed. Definitely this is Muggle knowledge. My father is a Muggle. I went to elementary school in the Muggle world, so don't think that I don't know what physics is. Pinello was annoyed by his definitely look. Shouted, I have never seen any Muggle who can get the answer directly without any measuring equipment like you. It took her a while to realize that she had been diverted from the subject, so she patiently asked, I want to know why you were able to knock off the 170-pound Flint Marcus with your 90-pound weight? Don't use his weight as an excuse. Flint is famously strong at Hogwarts. Almost all the senior Quidditch players have suffered from him. Only you taught him a lesson. Everyone says you cast a mysterious spell on yourself or drank some strange potion. No, I didn't do anything. Yeting shook his head helplessly and emphasized, I have already said that people are different, and muscles are also different. As he spoke, he patted his chest. Seeing that the other party never revealed the real reason, Pinello was a little angry. Okay, let me see what's different about your muscles. As she said that, she stretched out her hand and pinched Yeting's chest muscles. It was a very special feeling, soft but very resilient, revealing vigorous strength and vitality. Definitely, and strong masculinity. Pinello was stunned on the spot, as was Yeting. He didn't expect that the senior sister who had always been intellectual and elegant would actually make such a move. In fact, after reaching out her hand, Pinello regretted it. She felt very guilty for being unreserved, but out of strong curiosity about Yeting, she still completed the action. The atmosphere immediately became strange. In the end, it was Pinello who broke the embarrassment first. Well, your chest muscles are quite strong, what am I talking about? Definitely, the last sentence was spoken so quietly that Yeting did not hear it. However, Yeting also subconsciously replied. Senior's chest muscles are also quite developed. The atmosphere became even more awkward. Chapter 60. After the game between Ravenclaw and Slytherin, the little necromancers were surprised to see a strange scene on their way back to the castle. There is a cage hanging from the ceiling of the corridor at the back of the castle. There are 3 mice in the cage, and underneath the cage are surrounded by cats. There are more than 10 of these cats, probably all the cats in Hogwarts, even Locust. Mrs. Liz is also inside. You know, there are not many little necromancers who have thought about using their cats to establish a good relationship with Mrs. Norris, so as to make Filch show mercy, but no one has ever succeeded, because Mrs. Norris has never do not mix with other cats. The cats were obviously attracted by the mice. They jumped up one after another, trying to reach the iron cage hanging from the ceiling. Every time the cat jumped up, the mice in the cage would be frightened and spin in circles. On several occasions, the cats almost succeeded, but ultimately fell short. But even so, the mouse in the cage was still frightened. The little necromancers watched this trick curiously and discussed who the culprit was. It was not until a witness revealed the news that the little necromancers were shocked. Yeting actually turned Malfoy and his followers into mice, pretending go into the cage and play with the cat. This was a big deal. This cage immediately became a rare sight for everyone. The little lions of Gryffindor rushed here one after another to watch the miserable situation of the Malfoy trio. Harry and Ron also came here. They had always been at odds with Malfoy. This time they could see them making a fool of themselves, and they immediately gloated. Ron's twin brothers George and Fred also came here. They greatly appreciated Yeting's tricks and expressed their intention to recruit Yeting to join their joke prop production team. He has enough knowledge and is very good at potions and alchemy. George said of Yeting, now we have seen that he is creative enough in pranks. It is obvious that no one is more suitable to join than him. It's ours. Instead, the professors arrived last. Snape roughly separated the little necromancers, crowded to the cage, waved his wand to drive away all the cats, and then lowered the cage. Professor McGonagall also arrived here. She is an expert in shape-shifting. Together with Professor Snape, she lifted the curse on the Malfoys. In full view, the three mice transformed into Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. The three of them crawled towards the corner with messy clothes, making chirping sounds, looking very flustered and frightened. It seemed that they had not yet recovered from their mouse state. Seeing the ugly behavior of the three of them, there was another burst of laughter around them. Ron laughed the loudest, but an angry Snape took the excuse and deducted 5 points from Gryffindor. Professor McGonagall looked at him with a look on his face. Very ugly. Later, the three of them were sent to Madame Pomfrey by the other Slytherins who hurriedly arrived. Lucius Malfoy's revenge came very quickly. That night, he rushed into the principal's office and loudly asked Dumbledore to expel Yeting, but Dumbledore sternly refused. Later, he became so angry that he cursed Yeting in front of Dumbledore in the principal's office. He also took out his wand and pointed it at his nose. As a result, he was hit by Yeting's wandless disarming curse and was knocked away on the spot. Magic wand! How dare you use a spell on me? Who do you think you are? He yelled at Yeting angrily, trying to use his voice to cover up his embarrassment at having his wand knocked away by a first-year student. You should apologize to Mr. Malfoy, Dumbledore said gently to Yeting. Mr. Malfoy only took out the wand because he was too excited. You have always been safe in Hogwarts, so you don't need to self-defense so fiercely. When he said the last word, he emphasized his tone and winked at Yeting playfully. Yeting also blinked in understanding. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Malfoy. He turned to Lucius Malfoy and nodded politely to him. I was just subconsciously acting in self-defense. I didn't know that your wand could be so easily. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry. He noticed that Mr. Malfoy's already pale face became even paler after hearing these words. Don't let me find a chance, otherwise I will definitely send you to Azkaban. After realizing that he would not get results with Dumbledore, Lucius Malfoy glared at Yeting, wrapped his body in a cloak, and left in a hurry. Then, Dumbledore looked at Yeting again. I know you are a great kid and have always been great. You are mature, kind, studious, and willing to help others. I have always thought you are one of the best students here. He said gently to Yeting, I also believe that if it weren't for Miss Granger, you wouldn't have done this, right? Yes, Yeting nodded, I have never been the same as these children. Dumbledore nodded happily, you have always been more mature than them. I have always thought so. However, you have to understand that not everyone is as sensible as you, especially Malfoy. Having said this, he paused and glanced at the door. You saw what his father was like, right? He grew up in a family like this. He was just a spoiled kid who didn't understand anything, but he was not a bad kid at heart. You have taught him enough lessons this time, and I believe he will not be so reckless again, so please don't get along with him, okay? Okay, for your sake. Yeting nodded indifferently, as long as he doesn't mess with me again. Thank you, Mr. Yet, you can go back. Dumbledore opened the door of the principal's office with a smile and sent Yeting out. I loved your Christmas gift by the way, it's been a long time since anyone gave me socks and they're never enough. Ah, this is a specialty brought back from Eastern Europe. Just like it. Yeting waved his hand and left the principal's office. There was a sound of a stone mechanism moving from behind. However, the next day, Snape also retaliated against Yeting. In Ravenclaw's potions class, he loudly announced that Ravenclaw would deduct 20 points for this, and decided on the spot to imprison Yeting in a high tower for a week. The Slytherin snakes finally got what they wanted, and they congratulated each other and announced that the genius and god of Ravenclaw would pay the price for what he had done. However, they were slapped in the face the next day. At breakfast time the next day, Fiji rushed to the lobby with a dozen cats, including Mrs. Norris, and surrounded Malfoy and his two followers. Malfoy, who had just finished his treatment with Madame Pomfrey, saw the cats and immediately recalled the nightmare experience. They screamed and ran away, while Fiji and her little brothers refused to obey. He chased after him relentlessly. Malfoy will never forget this day. Fiji used the entire Hogwarts castle as her hunting ground. For a whole day, she and her brothers launched a brutal hunt for Draco Malfoy. Although there is no need to actually do anything, Malfoy will run away as soon as he sees them. They will suddenly appear from any corner at any time and any place, and jump in front of Malfoy, scaring him so much that he runs away with his head in his arms. This makes him run away. He could do nothing but run away that day, and in the end he had to hide in the lounge, wrapping himself in a quilt and shivering. Finally, before dinner time, the door of the tower opened with a bang. Yeting followed the sound and saw Professor Snape standing at the door with a gloomy face. "You win," he said in a hoarse voice, "take your cat and leave immediately. Don't let me see you using magic in the corridor again." That night, everyone was surprised to find that Yeting appeared in front of everyone again after just one day of confinement. All the little necromancers firmly believed that Yeting defeated Professor Snape. Remarks on the launch. I am really happy that my first online novel is now on the shelves. The author, I am an old bookworm. Internet novels have had a great impact on my life, definitely. In the past, most of them had negative impacts. I started reading online novels during the summer vacation of my third year of junior high school, and I was addicted to them throughout high school. If I hadn't finally broken free in time, I probably wouldn't have been able to read even one book. But in fact, online novels had a great influence on my study in high school. When I entered school, my grades were among the top 20 in the school. The school was ranked first in the city and top 5 in the province. If I could graduate with this ranking, I would probably be able to go to school. King Bei, although he still went to a prestigious school, it was only ranked among the top 10 in the country, and this was also due to the lower scores in this province. Once you get to college, things get even more out of hand. All you need to do is pass all professional courses, and there are even many who fail. Who was the unlucky person who told me that going to college would be easy? So, from the year I graduated from junior high school to now, although online novels have brought me great happiness, they have also had negative effects. I don't want to accuse anything here, because ultimately this is all a matter of my own self-control. But some time ago, I considered another question: can online novels really only have a negative impact on me? So I started trying to write my own novel. In the past, my favorite novels to read were fantasy novels. Then because the routines were the same, I started to read urban supernatural novels. After entering college, maybe I started to face more real problems, so I started to read those urban novels again. Rebirth stories should either follow the entertainment route or the commercial route. It is best to be closer to reality, such as having real characters, companies appear, etc. Also, my all-time love is fanfiction, which definitely stems from my wide range of interests. In addition to online novels, I have a strong interest in various animations and games. In addition to online novels in high school, I also read through Jingyu Huang. Later, I also dabbled in the Devil's High School novel version, various Japanese light novels, Harry Potter series, Ice and Fire, World of Warcraft novels, etc. It can be said that I know everything about ACGN. But not proficient in everything. But these hobbies and experiences have really given me a good foundation for writing my own novels, especially writing fan fiction. So there was The God of All Realms begins with Harry Potter. I love reading fanfics because they make up for the imperfections of the original works. I love reading harem comics and harem novels because harems are the happy end in my mind. Now that I write a book, I will definitely follow the concepts I have always had, harem and cool writing. Definitely, I want to say more than this. The Fei Lu boss I admire the most is Zhu Ziyu. His novels are not only harem and exciting novels, but also have their own novel ideas. They are also relatively rigorous in terms of settings and logic, and they can justify themselves without being full of flaws. I hope to learn from the big guys. I hope that after writing my work, it will not only be a quick snack, but also allow readers to remember more. For example, my imagination, my setting, my understanding of the original work, etc. Please rest assured that I am not a young artist myself. The most literary career I have ever done is reciting ancient poems and listening to ancient songs, still on Station B. I am a science geek, and you may be able to guess my specific major by reading the novels I write. Having rambled so much is just an author describing his own mental journey. Anyway, thank you all for your support. Thank you all for the rewards. Thank you all for your monthly passes, flowers, and collections. Thank you all for your comments, support, and suggestions. To be honest, these supports have given me a lot of encouragement. As a new author, I have been trembling with fear since I started the book, for fear that reality would slap me in the face. But you showed me that I still have some talent, and my hard work pays off. Really, I collected 15,000 V before it was put on the shelves, and more than 10,000 flowers, but I still have more than 30 chapters of monthly tickets. In addition, there are rewards and reminder votes from big guys. For a new author like me, this is indeed a good result. You guys are so awesome. I will not let down your support and continue to bring exciting plots after it is released. The world of Harry Potter is getting better and better, the protagonist is gradually revealed, and he himself will face greater challenges. The protagonist's group, Ho, and team, Gong, are constantly being established, and the research on magic will become more in-depth. In addition to the magic line, another line of the protagonist's strength development will also be revealed. The clues have definitely been written down, it depends on whether everyone can guess it. In addition, there are various magical worlds waiting for the protagonist, World of Warcraft, Xingyu, Magic Forbidden, etc. If there is anything else about the world you want to see and magic you want to learn, you can mention it in the comment area. Seriously, the comment section could be more active. Finally, let me make some requests to everyone. Please make first order, full order, monthly pass, and flowers. It will be released at midnight, and there will definitely be more updates on the day it is released. The final exam just ends today, and I am ready to spend a whole day on it. It just depends on how many chapters I can write in a day. In short, thank you for your support and I will continue to work hard. Chapter 61. Snape lost face with Yeting, and the Gryffindors gloated about it, but they suffered retribution within a few days. Because Gryffindor's next game is against Hufflepuff, Snape will be the referee. The little lions were all dumbfounded at this time. They had great doubts about Snape's fairness, but even Captain Wood had no choice but to promise to fully abide by the rules during the game to prevent Snape from making trouble. But Seeker Harry Potter had other concerns. He felt that Professor Snape applied to become a referee in order to deliberately get closer to him. Ron also had the same view and made a suggestion: don't participate in the game. Just say you are sick, like breaking your leg or something. I can't do this, Harry said. There's no substitute Seeker in the team. If I quit, Gryffindor won't be able to compete. Just then, Neville fell into the common room. No one could guess how he got out of the portrait hole, because his legs were tightly glued together. Harry and the others could tell at a glance that they were under a leg-locking spell. He must have hopped like a rabbit all the way up the stairs and into Gryffindor Castle. Both of them laughed out loud, but after they finished laughing, they were unable to do anything with the leg-locking spell. Finally, Harry proposed to go to the public library to ask Yeting for help, because among the little necromancers Harry knew, he was the one with magic. 137 is the most superb. I know where he is. When I was looking for clues about Nico Flamel in the library just now, he and Hermione Granger were reading together. I really don't know why they could keep reading. Luoan reminded. They found Yeting in a corner of the library. Yeting snapped his fingers, and Neville's legs separated immediately. He stood up, shaking all over. Oh, how cool! Hermione looked at him with envy. You can actually cast spells without a wand. I heard that only powerful and skilled necromancers can do this. How did you do it? It's very simple. Do you still remember the magic we used unconsciously when we didn't get the wand? Yeting explained patiently, if you want to cast spells without a wand, you should recall the feeling at that time, and then try to control it with your own consciousness. When you can consciously control this, you will be able to cast spells without a wand. If you want to learn, I will teach you slowly. Hermione nodded excitedly, but Harry Potter and the three people next to him were confused. Finally, Neville said to Yeting, "Thank you for helping me remove this magic." Yeting shook his head, indicating that it was nothing. But Hermione asked curiously, "What's going on? Who cast the leg-locking spell on you?" "Malfoy," Neville said, his voice trembling. "I met him outside the library. He said he had been looking for someone to practice the spell with." "It's Malfoy again." Yeting rolled his eyes helplessly. "This guy is always going to cause something. You have to go find Professor McGonagall." Hermione urged Neville, "Sue him." Neville shook his head. "I don't want any more trouble," he muttered vaguely. "You must deal with him bravely, Neville." Ron said, "He has always been domineering. There is no reason for us to surrender in front of him and let him succeed easily, just like what Yeting did last time. You don't have to tell me that I'm too cowardly and not worthy of being in Gryffindor. Malfoy has already told me that." Neville choked with sobs. Harry reached into his robe pocket, pulled out a bar of chocolate, and handed it to Neville. Neville looked like he was about to cry. "You're better than a dozen Malfoys," Harry said. The Sorting Hat chose you into Gryffindor, right? Where is Malfoy? In the nasty Slytherin. Neville opened the horseshoe-shaped chocolate, his lips twitching into a weak smile. Thank you, Harry. I'm going to bed. Do you want a card? You collect cards, don't you? After Neville left, Harry looked at the famous master's card. He gasped, stared at the back of the card, then looked up at Ron. I've found him, he whispered, I've found Flamel. I told you, I've seen that name somewhere before. It turned out that I saw it on the train coming here. Listen to this, Dumbledore's most widely known contributions include, defeating the Black Necromancer Grindelwald in 1945, discovering the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and developing alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel, AEAE, fruitful. Nicholas Flamel is good at alchemy. Ron was also very happy, now we can narrow down the search scope. After saying that, he looked at Hermione and Yeting, both of whom showed helpless expressions. Hey, remember what Hagrid said last time? Ron reminded them loudly, he mentioned Nico Flamel, aren't you curious at all? Definitely not. Hermione looked weird, and it took her a long time to say, actually, I'm very curious, but we already know who Nico Flamel is. You already know who Nico Flamel is? Ron was dumbfounded and looked shocked. They had been looking through books in the library for a long time but could not find a single word about Nico Flamel. Now that you know it, Harry looked at Hermione with a pleading expression, can you tell us who Nico Flamel is? We have been looking for him for a long time, and this is really important. Is that okay? Hermione looked at Yeting with a questioning expression. Yeting sighed and nodded, now that they have clues, it is only a matter of time before they find the information about Nicolm. So Hermione cleared her throat and lowered her voice as if acting, Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. Her words did not have the effect she expected. What stone? Harry and Ron asked. Oh, what's the matter? Don't you two usually read books? You don't even know about the Sorcerer's Stone. She shook her head and explained, the Philosopher's Stone is a magical substance with amazing functions. It can turn any metal into pure gold, and it can also create the elixir of life, so that people who drink this medicine will never die. For many centuries since then, there have been many reports about the Philosopher's Stone, but the only remaining Philosopher's Stone belongs to the famous alchemist and opera lover Mr. Nico Flamel. He celebrated his 665th birthday last year and is now married to his wife Pellegrino. Renard, 658 years old, lived in seclusion in Devon together. Do you understand? After explaining, Hermione raised her head and analyzed, that big dog must be guarding Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. I dare say Flamel asked Dumbledore to keep it for him, because he was a friend, and he knew that someone was trying to get the Philosopher's Stone. That's why he moved the Philosopher's Stone out of Gringotts. A stone can turn gold and make you immortal. Harry said, no wonder Snape is thinking about it too. Anyone would want it. No wonder we can't find Flamel in the research on the development of modern witchcraft, Ron suddenly realized. Since he is 665 years old, he can't be considered a modern person, right? However, Yeting's cold words broke their excitement. I have to warn you that precious treasures like the Philosopher's Stone are generally involved in great dangers. It is impossible for ordinary thieves to plot the Philosopher's Stone. As we all know, Dumbledore is a friend of Nico Flamel, so the only person who still wants to take away the Sorcerer's Stone despite considering Dumbledore may be a powerful Black Necromancer. The danger here is not that you can intervene. Chapter 62. The discussion about Nico Flamel ended in an unhappy relationship between the four of them. However, soon, Ron and Harry approached Yeting again, hoping that he could come to watch the game on the day of the game. Help, Ron begged with a blushing face, Harry is about to participate in the Quidditch match. This time Snape applied to become the referee. He did this deliberately, just to kill Harry. Only you can deal with him, you did it last time. How many times have I said that Snape can't hurt Harry? Yeting waved his hand impatiently, Snape has been a professor at Hogwarts for many years, Dumbledore will not let a dangerous people have carried Hogwarts for so long. He hurried away, leaving Ron and Harry disappointed. He did it on purpose. Suddenly, Ron said sharply, he's afraid of you, H.A. He's afraid of me. Harry looked at Ron blankly. Why is he afraid of me? He is afraid of your Quidditch skills. Luoan became more and more excited as he talked. He led the Ravenclaw team to 2 consecutive victories, and the only thing standing in their way was Gryffindor. You and he are both geniuses who joined the team in the first year, and your Quidditch skills it's Gryffindor's magic weapon to win, and he's afraid of you. He wouldn't think so. Harry looked at Ron suspiciously, but he vaguely agreed in his heart, because if this statement was true, it would prove that he was an opponent that Ravenclaw's rising Quidditch star Yeting took seriously. He wants Snape to kill you or at least break your leg during the Quidditch match. Ron yelled, this way you won't be a threat to him. No, I don't believe he would do that, he's a good man. Harry shook his head, finally suppressing the tempting thought. On the first weekend of March, the game between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff began. Yeting did not go to the game. His newly purchased broomstick has arrived, and he and Senior Pinello are currently disassembling the broomstick in the room of requirement for research. Yeting's mastery of ancient magic texts is enough for him to make his own flying broomstick. Although Pinello is not as good as him in this aspect, she is very happy to participate in this matter as Yeting's assistant and hopes to learn something from it. As the team's chaser, Zhang-Chu watched the game with other team members, hoping to see Gryffindor's weaknesses. Dumbledore also came to watch the game, seemingly to prevent Harry from having another accident, which made Harry feel relieved. Snape had great ill will towards Gryffindor and favoured Hufflepuff as a referee. An angry George Weasley hit Snape with a bludger, but Snape seized the opportunity and awarded Hufflepuff a penalty. However, despite Snape's best efforts, he still could not prevent Gryffindor from winning. Because the game ended in only 5 minutes, and before the players on both sides got into the zone, Harry Potter had already caught the golden snitch. The stands were boiling, this will be a new record. No one can remember a game in which the snitch was caught so quickly. As the Gryffindors poured into the arena, Harry saw Snape landing next to him, his face pale and his lips pursed tightly. An hour later, Harry left the dressing room alone and was about to return his Nimbus 2000 to the broom shed when he suddenly discovered that Snape had sneaked into the Forbidden Forest while others were having dinner. Curious, Harry jumped back on his broomstick and followed. In the Forbidden Forest, he found Snape threatening Professor Quirrell, and also mentioned the Sorcerer's Stone and Hagrid's 3-headed dog. This time, his suspicion of Snape deepened. While Harry Potter was worryingly exploring Snape's conspiracy, Yeting was still conducting research on flying broomsticks. In the past few days, he and Pinello had skipped all their classes and stayed in the room of requirement. They were both the best students. As long as they could guarantee excellence in the final exam, the professors would always turning a blind eye. At the moment, the room of requirement has been transformed into a carpenter's workshop, with broom handles, scraps of branches, tripods, and various broomstick parts everywhere. In order to better understand the working mechanism and actual effects of various magic spells on broomsticks, Yeting bought all the models of broomsticks available on the market, including all kinds of outdated broomsticks. Now he is sitting on a chair, holding a Comet 230 in his hand, skillfully disassembling it with a wand, and next to him, Senior Pinello is labeling all the disassembled accessories, and then sorting them into categories. Put together. 0, please give me flowers. The broomsticks of various flying broomsticks are neatly placed on the wall not far away. There are also various twigs, various petals, various broom tails, etc. in other places. Pinello carefully puts them placed in an orderly manner. How long do I have to do this job? Finally, a slightly impatient Penelope broke the silence, tightened her headscarf again to prevent water from staining her hair and said, I feel like I've been doing this all day. This is necessary preparation before the study. Yeting handed over another bare broom handle and replied calmly, I need a large enough database as a control group so that I can accurately judge the impact of the spell on all aspects of the broom. The disadvantage of an insufficient control group is... Okay, I know. Pinello looked helplessly at Yeting, who was explaining seriously, and suddenly laughed PSST. What a serious guy, don't you know? When we girls complain, we don't want you to explain, but we seek comfort from you. At this time, we just need to say something nice to coax him. Yet. Yeting looked at Pinello blankly. In that case, why are you asking? Why not just say it? Seeing Yeting like this, Pinello felt angry and funny. Yeting usually seemed very mature in her dealings with others. Even she herself would look childish in front of him, but when it came to emotions, he was completely bad at it. Girls are like that. They have to beat around the bush to express something in a sentence. In fact, they just want the other person to understand it. This kind of tacit understanding is the romance that girls pursue. Is that so? Yeting nodded knowingly. But senior sister is so generous and considerate, so she is not such a superficial person. I just said that he is not good at emotions. Isn't this very understandable? Pinello glanced at the busy Yeting tenderly, with an appreciative smile on his lips. Yes, for her, ordinary sweet words did not have much appeal. What attracted her most was Yeting's wisdom and sense of responsibility in being able to stand up when critical. Chapter 63. Yeting's efforts were not in vain. He spent about a week figuring out the structure of the broomstick and the effects of various spells on the broomstick. In fact, if he was not proficient in ancient magic texts, then he would not even be able to complete the step of disassembling the broom. Because broomstick manufacturing companies usually cast secret spells on their broomsticks. If Yeting did not use the correct techniques when dismantling it and cracked the confidentiality magic, these confidentiality spells would completely destroy the disassembled broom. This design is used to prevent others from imitating their technology through disassembly. Just like a professional hacker cracking a firewall or jailbreaking an iPhone, Yeting perfectly cracked the broom manufacturer's various protective measures, completely exposing the secrets of the broomstick to his eyes. However, it is easier to crack than to make. Unlike hundreds of years ago, since 1926 when the three brothers Bob, Bill, and Barnaby Alton founded the Sideways Broom Company, the Sideways X-Plane broomstick is the product of their 263 brothers. The history of broomsticks manufacturing has broken away from individual manual manufacturing and turned into corporate mass manufacturing. In this case, the manufacturing of broomsticks became an assembly line activity, and the original design and charms of the broomsticks began to become more and more complex. The most advanced brooms at present, such as the Nimbus 2001, and the Firebolt under design, are all completed by several or even dozens of professional necromancers, and this is especially true for top products like the Firebolt. That is to say, only a genius like Yeting, who not only has sufficient learning ability, but also has a strong memory, can fully understand the most advanced and complete production method of modern brooms by himself. During this period, Pinello gave Yeting a lot of help. She has been patiently helping Yeting organize and classify broom parts, make records, help, and so on. She is also responsible for taking care of his food and daily life. Yeting is here when he was studying the broomstick. He was so sleepless and forgetful about food and sleep that he didn't even return to the rest room. Pinello had no choice but to help him bring meals, clean clothes, etc. every day, and even delegated his prefect's responsibilities to another person. Sometimes she would even have no time to return to the Ravenclaw lounge, so she would have to deal with it in the room of requirement with Yeting. Although it was a pity, Yeting did not seize the opportunity to do anything else in this state. Just kidding, no one would be afraid of this in a laboratory full of sawdust parts. But after this week-long relationship, the relationship between the two has indeed gotten closer and has become quite tacit and subtle. Regarding this situation, both Hermione and Zhongqiu were a little jealous. In the next week, Hermione complained to Yeting whenever she had the chance to complain that she was not included in the experiment, while Zhongqiu had a temper for a day, and finally Yeting offered to help her upgrade the broomstick as compensation. This time she was appeased. Little girl. However, after this experiment, Yeting finally realized the importance of a good experimental team, because during this week, he spent a lot of time on some physical work or repetitive tasks, but what was really important was work, such as cracking spells and analyzing data, actually takes less time than imagined. Therefore, he decided that during the few years he stayed at Hogwarts, he would carefully select and train a research team from among his classmates to help him go further on the road to researching magic. Definitely, in addition to intelligence, the requirements for members of the research team include loyalty and appearance. The former is because the experimental team will eventually come into contact with many of his core secrets, including Oriana's existence, summoning and time travel, etc. The latter is a rigid requirement of him as a member of the Strict Control and Appearance Association. After all, they are all people who get along day and night, and their appearance must be pleasing to the eye. Currently, Pinello is the only qualified team member, with Hermione and Zhongqiu as backups because their magic level is not high enough. Thinking back to the plot of Harry Potter, other more suitable members of the synthesis team are Luna Lovegood, who will enter school next year, and the Vila sisters from Booth Barton who she will meet in the future. Definitely, this is just Yeting's temporary delusion. The topic returns to the broomstick. After Yeting finished his research on flying broomsticks, he immediately started making his own broomstick. This process is completely done by him, including material selection, design, carpentry, polishing, sanding, spell casting, seal carving, etc. all by one hand. In order to make this broom, Xin took out the best materials in his collection, all special materials obtained from the dimensional summons. The tail and twigs of the broom are made from the branches of the sacred tree Fuzang, because the tail and twigs are the source of power for the broom, and Fuzang is the tree from which the sun rises, which corresponds to power. The broomstick is made from the thick branches of the sacred tree Ruomu. The broomstick is responsible for force, direction control, and structural maintenance. Ruomu is the tree where the sun sets, corresponding to the direction of the sun. The broom's retaining ring, footrests, and other metal structures are made of solar gold, a mythical metal that appears in every world where the sun god exists. Legend has it that Apollo's solar chariot, Ra's solar boat, etc. were all made of sun gold essence. It definitely has different names in different civilizations. Even Amaterasu's Yata mirror also used this material. These materials, coupled with the spell that Yeting originally derived from summarizing the technologies of major broomstick companies, together constitute a nearly perfect broom. Yeting named him Sun Lun Zero. The sun wheel has a streamlined and graceful curve, with golden patterns engraved on it, symbolizing the sun. The tail branches are neatly and smoothly trimmed, and the golden petals look shiny. The whole broom has a unique look from top to bottom. Of beauty. Viewed from a distance, the sun disk is indeed as dazzling as its name. Definitely, using so many precious materials, the broom made has super properties. In terms of speed, due to intercepting the concept of the sun, the theoretical maximum speed of the broom reaches 1,120 miles per hour, which is about 1,800 kilometers per hour, or 500 meters per second, which is quite the speed at which the sun patrols the sky. The specific calculation is the circumference of the Earth including the atmosphere as the distance traveled by the sun for a whole day, divided by the time of 24 hours. Definitely, this is only a theoretical speed and can only be achieved without taking the driver into consideration. But even so, the speed of the sun wheel is already fast enough. As long as the driver can bear it, it can even break the speed of sound. In terms of braking and steering, the performance of the sun wheel is not as amazing as the speed, but it is still able to greatly surpass all flying broomsticks on the market today. In terms of stability, the sun wheel is unique. The mass of the sun is 2 times 10 to the 30th kilogram, and there has been no drastic change since ancient times. The sun wheel also has the same characteristics, remaining firm no matter the wind or rain. If there are no accidents, the lifespan is at least 5 billion years. As a broomstick with the concept of the sun, the wheel has another main feature. The first is self-discipline. Just like the sun rising steadily in the east and setting in the west, the sun wheel is quite advanced in its self-discipline system. Other brooms can receive at most 2.8 simple commands such as get up, or simple commands such as automatic suspension. Behavior, and the sun wheel can achieve automatic driving. Although it cannot perform any complicated flight actions during autonomous driving, this is already a breakthrough of huge amounts. Yeting also decided that when future technology is reached, real intelligence will be added to the sun wheel, such as a weapon spirit or something. The second feature is that it performs better during the day, or anywhere there is sun. The third characteristic is the solar power of the solar disk. Due to the materials and runes, the sun wheel contains huge solar magic power. Using the power of the sun wheel can emit high temperature, strong light, and even fusion nuclear reactions at any time. This is Yeting's concept of the sun in magic combined with modern science. If the upgrade you make is announced, you can even get a box of forest metal, definitely if those old-fashioned people can understand what nuclear fusion is. With the sun wheel, Ting can be considered invincible whether it is Quidditch matches or daily travel. Chapter 64. Sunrise caused quite a stir during Ravenclaw's Quidditch practice. Yeting, who was riding the sun wheel, seemed to turn into a golden light, flashing through the air. The performance of the sun wheel is very good. As long as Yeting touches it lightly, it will turn accurately, as if it obeys his thoughts rather than his operations. Its speed was so fast that everything around it was a blur. This made Yeting decide to start training his dynamic vision. It also performed very well in turning. Every time Yeting, who was riding the sun wheel, made an incredible sharp turn, it would cause Zhongqiu to scream, but every time the sun wheel did it steadily. I dare say, this is better than any broomstick on the market. Roger praised the sun wheel. I feel that with it, you can even defeat Gryffindor alone. Although Harry Potter's performance in the last game made the team members feel more pressure, the appearance of the sun wheel greatly encouraged them. They felt that Ravenclaw had a sure chance of winning this Quidditch Cup. After the training, Zhang Qiu nervously reminded Yeting, "Remember to hide your sun wheel when you go back. If I were the captain of Gryffindor, I would find a way to steal it before the game. Take your broom, or destroy it. Then they can give it a try." Yeting smiled nonchalantly, "If they don't want to be burned to ashes or blinded." After making the broomstick, Yeting used his special materials to make a magic wand for himself. Definitely, since the wand was more focused on material, size and matching with the owner than on craftsmanship, he didn't spend too much time this time. The wood of the wand is the branch of Garni, the mother tree of the 3 world trees in Azeroth, and it is the favorite one of the demigod Avienna. The material of the core of the wand is Asteton, the master of arcana, knowledge, mysteries, the beard of Norganon the dream weaver. Norganon also comes from the plane of World of Warcraft and is one of the creation titans of the Pantheon. It was he who gave spellweaver Malegus the power to control magic. The combination of the two materials creates an unprecedentedly powerful wand. Even the legendary Elder Wand will not have such power. This wand is 12 inches long, tough, and elastic. Yeting named it Spellweaver, just like Malegus's nickname. Anyway, this dragon has a dead wife and is crazy, and in the end he has to die a good death. Such a good title will be wasted if it is not used. No one knew that the most powerful wand in the world of Harry Potter was born in the Room of Requirement. Due to Yeting's strong control, no one noticed that his magic was much more powerful than before. In mid-March, it seemed that fate did not want Hogwarts to have a peaceful life. This time, something unexpected happened to the gamekeeper Hagrid. He actually raised a dragon. No one knows how he got a dragon egg, but he actually hid the egg in his cabin and hatched it by the fire. This is a rare Norwegian ridgeback, with a thin black body, spiny wings, and a long big nose with white nostrils, horn bumps on its head, and orange-red eyes protruding outwards. Hagrid named it Nob. However, in the world of necromancers, it is illegal to keep dragons privately. At the Necromancer Conference in 1709, a bill banning dragon keeping was officially passed. Hagrid tried his best to hide all this, but he was still discovered. First, he was spotted by Harry and Ron borrowing books about raising dragons from the library, and brought the books to the cabin. Then, her behavior of hatching dragon eggs in the fire was discovered by Fijo, who came to tease Yaya. Fijo was not an ordinary cat, but a cat demon with human intelligence. She turned around and all this was told to Yeting, so Hermione, Zhang Qiu, and Pinello also knew everything. Yeting has a special curiosity about fire dragons, because in his previous life, fire dragons were a very famous fantasy creature, and could even be called synonymous with Western fantasy together with magic. So he enthusiastically proposed to Hagrid that he conduct a series of in vivo observations on Norbert, and as a price, Yeting would provide Hagrid with magical services during the period of raising dragons, including brewing potions to prevent diseases for fire dragons every day. Perform a bath of fire on the fire dragon, used to replace the magma, and cast an AA on Hagrid's cabin once every 3 days. Since Yeting promised that he would only take a little blood and collect some of Norbert's shed cuticles and would not harm him, Hagrid agreed to Yeting's conditions for the sake of Norbert's growth. However, the most unfortunate thing is that out of curiosity, Harry Potter and Yeting skipped class on the day Norbert hatched to visit the birth of the dragon. As a result, Harry was followed by Malfoy, and Malfoy also knew about the dragon. The presence. But Malfoy is different from others. He has always had evil intentions. If this was revealed, Hagrid would be fired. In fact, for the next week, the malicious smile hiding on Malfoy's face made Harry and Ron very uneasy. They had to spend most of their spare time in Hagrid's dark cabin, trying to reason with him about the facts. "Just let it go," Harry advised. "Let it go." "I can't," said Hagrid. "It's too small and will die. In just 1 week, its length has tripled." Clouds of smoke puffed out from its nostrils. Hagrid put aside his job of guarding the hunting ground because the little dragon made him busy. The floor was littered with empty brandy bottles and chicken feathers. Hagrid looked at the little dragon with eyes blurred by tears and said, "It really knows me now, you look at it." "Norbert. Norbert. Where is Mother?" Harry raised his voice. "In 2 weeks, Norbert will be as long as your house. Malfoy will go to Dumbledore at any time." Hagrid bit his lip. I know I can't keep it forever, but I can't throw it away like this for 800, no." Finally, Harry had an idea, and he thought of Ron's brother, Charlie Weasley. Charlie was studying dragons in Romania, and he was the most suitable person Harry knew to take over for Norbert. So Ron sent Charlie a letter. Yeting has a different view on this. In fact, even if Dumbledore knew about Noble's existence and had no one to belong to, what he would do is send Noble away. During a routine observation of the fire dragon, Yeting suggested, although Dumbledore Leto is always planning something mysteriously, but overall he is a good guy. I don't understand why you Gryffindors are always unwilling to believe him. It's not bad for Snape, this time the fire dragon it's okay, you always want to hide it from him, I don't understand what good it does to you. Harry and Ron were speechless at his words, but they still insisted on their opinions. However, something even more unfortunate happened. Charlie's reply to Ron was hidden in a borrowed book, and the book was borrowed by Malfoy. In other words, Malfoy knew that Norbert was going to be sent away on Saturday night. According to the original plot, Malfoy ultimately failed to prevent Noble from being sent away by Harry. However, perhaps because of Yeting's existence, Malfoy did not dare to stop all this in the castle, but he also wanted to see Harry suffer misfortune and wanted to deal with Harry's friends. So he made another decision. Accident, just happened. Chapter 65. At Friday's dinner, Harry Potter noticed Malfoy sneaking out of the hall with a piece of steak at the Slytherin table. He felt a little strange, so he found an excuse to leave the table and followed. In the corridor, however, he lost track of Malfoy. No. Malfoy must have gone to Hagrid's place. At this time, Hagrid was eating in the lobby. There was absolutely no one waiting in Hagrid's cabin. If Malfoy wanted to do something before Norbert was sent away, this was the best time. Harry quickly called Ron and hurried towards Hagrid's hut. When they arrived, what they saw shocked them. The cabin door was wide open. Malfoy was running towards the Forbidden Forest with the piece of steak, while Norbert was flying and jumping, clumsily following him. They had gone a long way, leaving them with a mess. Hurry up and catch up with them. Ron shouted, we have to stop Malfoy. The two drew their wands and chased Malfoy, quickly attracting his attention. Why are you here, Scarhead? Discovered by his mortal enemy, Malfoy seemed a little panicked and immediately quickened his pace. Stop it, Malfoy, Harry shouted at him. Otherwise I will be rude to you. Don't even think about it. I will let the professors take a closer look at the great secret source you have hidden. Malfoy ran faster. Harry gritted his teeth. Suddenly, he remembered what happened to Neville a few weeks ago. He raised his wand and pointed it at Malfoy. Stand stiff and stop dead. The next moment, Malfoy's legs seemed to be tied together, unable to move. He fell down immediately while running and rolled on the ground awkwardly. His cloak was covered with mud. However, he still held the stake tightly in his hand. This was great. Norbert, who had been greedy for steak for a long time, immediately seized the opportunity. The monster, which was about the same size as Malfoy himself, immediately pounced on it. Seeing the ugly big lizard in front of him and its sharp teeth getting closer and closer to him, Malfoy immediately panicked. He screamed and waved his wand vigorously. A ray of red light hit Norbert's big nose, but it only knocked him over and did not hurt him. In fact, even if it is a young dragon, its scales are enough to resist most magic. Malfoy's magic level cannot make the magic effective on Norbert. However, although this blow did not hurt the young dragon, it deeply angered it. Norbert struggled to get up, took a deep breath at Malfoy, and then blew out a burst of fire. Since it was still a young dragon, the flames were not huge, but they were enough to seriously injure Malfoy. Malfoy already realized something was wrong when he saw Norbert take a breath, so he ignored the image of a pure-blood necromancer he had always maintained and rolled on the spot. Only then could he avoid Norbert's dragon breath. Fire was spit out where Malfoy had just been, burning the ground black. Just as Malfoy was unlucky, a spark just happened to jump on his cloak, but no one noticed it. The young dragon missed the target, but because it was not big enough, it could not spit out a second breath of dragon breath in a short period of time, so it flapped its wings and flew towards Malfoy. Malfoy tried to get up in a panic, but fell to the ground again due to the leg-locking curse, and was jumped by Norbert. Looking at the file size of his head in front of him, biting him with a bloody mouth, Malfoy grabbed it with both hands, just catching Noble's chin and nose, so he used both hands to force wanted to push Norbert away. The two of them were in a stalemate, one wanted to bite and the other wanted to push the other away. Help me! Seeing Harry and Potter coming from afar, Malfoy screamed as if he was grasping at a life-saving straw. Help me drive it away, it wants to kill me. Finally, Harry and Ron caught up and saw the scene in front of them. Oh, Malfoy finally got his comeuppance. Ron glanced at him with disgust and gloated, finally something can teach him a lesson. However, Harry disagreed with him. We have to stop Norbert, Ron. He said nervously, if Malfoy is injured or dies here, Hagrid will be in bad luck. You're right. Ron bit his lip, looking a little unwilling. If anything happens to Malfoy, Hagrid will definitely be sent to Azkaban. So each of them grabbed one of the baby dragon's wings and worked together to pull Norbert off Malfoy. Norbert was just a young dragon, and his strength was obviously no match for the three of them, and he was quickly pulled off Malfoy. At the moment, Malfoy was in an extremely embarrassed state, with wrinkles all over his body and blood oozing from his shoulders, the damage caused by Norbert's claws. He staggered and tried to stand up, but failed again and again. Suddenly, he felt a heat in his buttocks. It turned out that Norbert's spark finally lit his cloak on fire, and smoke started to rise from his buttocks. Damn it, help me, Potter. Put out the fire. Harry and Ron were trying to think of a way to subdue Norbert. The young dragon showed its ferocity and started struggling wildly. Its sharp claws almost scratched them several times. Harry and Ron's spells had no effect on it at all. Make it more relaxed. Suddenly, the frantic Norbert broke free from Harry and Ron's hands and attacked them instead. Harry, who was well prepared for this, immediately counterattacked with his wand. Although it had no effect, he managed to repel it. Finally, the pain made Norbert wake up from his madness. He glared at them fiercely, and then stumbled towards the Forbidden Forest. Exhausted, Ron and Harry no longer had the energy to chase it, so they turned to help Malfoy put out the fire, patting the place where he had caught fire with their robes, and finally put out the fire. However, the fire of the fire dragon is not an ordinary flame. Their flames are also poisonous. If there are no effective detoxification measures, the burned area will always be in severe pain. So, with Malfoy constantly wailing, Harry and Ron helped him to Madame Pomfrey's school infirmary. The fire was a bit deep, and he had to stay here with his butt stuck out for a week. When she understood the reason for Malfoy's injury, Madame Pomfrey was furious, accused them of being too bold, and asked Harry and Ron to stay in the school infirmary for a checkup to prevent poisoning. Before they left, Malfoy, who was lying on the hospital bed, gave Harry a complicated look and said angrily, "For the sake of saving me this time, I won't tell anyone about it, but next time I will. It will make you look good." Chapter 66. However, even so, there is still an unresolved problem. What should Norbert do who escapes into the Forbidden Forest? The next day, in Hagrid's hut. "Norbert, my poor little darling, how could you just leave me like this?" The tall Hagrid was huddled up at the moment, crying like a child. But no one paid attention to him. Harry and Ron invited Yeting, because he was stronger than them, and they wanted his help to find Norbert in the Forbidden Forest. "So, you just let it run into the Forbidden Forest?" After hearing their statements, Yeting couldn't help but feel a headache. In the magical world, fire dragons are one of the most powerful creatures and the top hunters. They have no natural enemies. Even young dragons are nearly invincible in the Forbidden Forest. Yeting explained to them angrily, "Norbert has passed his weakest period, and he already has a certain ability to hunt, especially here in the Forbidden Forest. There are no very powerful predators in the ecosystem of the Forbidden Forest. Thestrals and unicorns are both gentle herbivores. The most powerful carnivores are wolves and eight-clawed spiders, but they will not be the opponents of the young dragon, especially the eight-clawed spiders. The dragon's breath can burn 620 of their nests. Here, no creature can suppress it, not even its own kind that competes with it. If it is given another mate, this is a typical species invasion. In this case, what do you think Nob will do? He will hunt and eat arbitrarily, and he will grow at a speed that is unimaginable to you. Soon, even the Centaur's tribe will be unable to deal with him. What we will face then is a truly top-level magical creature. If we are not careful, we will be able to kill him. If he breaks into Hogwarts, he may bring about a massacre." Yeting's analysis frightened them. Ron wanted to open his mouth several times to deny it all, but he had to say that Yeting's analysis was completely reasonable and he could not find any reason to question it. "Then, what should we do?" After a moment of silence, Harry finally asked in a hoarse voice. "Hurry up and contact Dumbledore and mobilize the professors to search for Norbert." Yeting said seriously. "No, you can't tell Professor Dumbledore." Finally, Ron plucked up the courage and said loudly, "If the professor knows about this, he will definitely expel Hagrid." Hearing this, Yeting frowned. "I told you, Dumbledore wouldn't do this." However, Harry and Ron didn't believe this at all and still begged. Yeting pondered for a moment and finally relaxed and agreed, "Okay, I cannot tell Dumbledore and help find the fire dragon, but you must also agree to 2 requirements." When Harry and Ron heard this, they immediately became happy and nodded hurriedly. So Yeting continued, "First, you 2 are not allowed to participate. You are too weak to even cause damage to it. Second, the fire dragon is too dangerous and I can't stop it, so there is no guarantee. If you can catch it, you might kill it." After hearing the first request, Harry and Ron reluctantly agreed, although they were a little reluctant. However, after hearing the second request, their reactions immediately became fierce. "No, you can't kill Norbert!" Ron shouted, "Hagrid will be sad. I definitely know he will be sad." Yeting said, his voice sounded cold and ruthless, "But I have to be responsible for the other little necromancers in Hogwarts, and I can't let this dragon stay in the Forbidden Forest for too long." This was a righteous statement, but completely inconsistent with his character. Then, he changed the subject, "But I promise, as long as I have the chance to capture Noble alive, I will not kill him." Ron and Harry could only reluctantly accept this answer, so they looked at the crying Hagrid. "Go! Go! Whatever you do, I can't control it." Hagrid whimpered, as if he had foreseen Norbert's fate. "Oh, my Norbert, my poor little baby." The 3 people left the wooden house one after another, leaving Hagrid crying loudly in the house. After watching Harry and Ron walk away, Yeting happily waved his fist, "Eej." Whether it was to contact Dumbledore or for the safety of the little necromancer, it was actually all to scare them. The intelligence of the fire dragons in the Harry Potter world is actually not very high. Their wings do not grow separately, but replace the 4 limbs like pterodactyls, so they are closer to wyvern than dragon, that is to say, Norbert's hatred for them will not last long. After entering the Forbidden Forest, Norbert, who is as comfortable as a fish in water, will most likely stay in the depths of the Forbidden Forest instead of coming to Hogwarts to ask for trouble. Yeting said those words simply because he wanted to persuade the 3 of them to allow him to hunt and kill Noble. Definitely, Yeting didn't lie, he just didn't tell them the specific probability. After convincing the 3 of them, no one would organize Yeting to hunt and dissect the fire dragon. This is a dragon, a real, living dragon, not a totem that only appears in literary works. Moreover, in addition to research, dragon blood, dragon claws, dragon industry, dragon nerves, dragon horns, dragon skin, dragon liver, and dragon meat are all precious magic materials. Now, it's all his. Yeting snapped his fingers and shouted, "The sun is coming." Soon, his broomstick came to him. Yeting rode on his broomstick and flew over the Forbidden Forest to start his search. For a week, Yeting spent several hours flying around the Forbidden Forest every day, but he couldn't find Noble. The only good thing is that he has effectively narrowed down the search scope, and he expects to find traces of the young dragon in 2 or 3 days. That night, Yeting set out again, preparing to search deeper, but he found a whole fire before he flew very far. This made his eyes light up. Maybe it was Norbert's dragon breath that lit something. So he clamped his legs together and accelerated the flight speed. The sun's disk traced a golden trajectory in the sky, and soon brought Ye to the light of the fire. The place was in a mess, the weeds and bushes were burning with raging flames, and the bodies of 2 centaurs lay on the ground. Yeting jumped off the broom and stepped forward cautiously. I saw that most of one of the corpses had been burned to coke, and the other was slightly burned, but the neck was bloody, and the head was tilted unnaturally. It was obvious that something had bitten off the neck. Obviously, Norbert had a conflict with the centaur tribe while hunting, but the centaurs obviously underestimated the young dragon and suffered a big loss. Judging from the situation at the scene, the battle ended not long ago, and the 2 parties should not have gone far. Yeting took out his wand and first cast a disembodiment spell on himself. Although this was of little use to creatures with sensitive senses of smell or hearing, it was better than nothing. Then he pointed forward again. Traces appear in his sight. There were clearly dense horse hoof prints and several dragon paw prints on the ground. These marks glowed with blue light and extended into the distance. So he looked for the traces and pursued them with gentle steps. Chapter 67. Yeting didn't follow the trail very far when he heard dragon roars and horse hooves, as well as voices speaking in some strange language. It seems that this is the new battlefield between centaurs and young dragons. So he quickened his pace, and soon, the real battlefield appeared in front of him. This is a clearing in the forest. No, this was not a clearing originally, but the fierce fighting and the hot dragon's breath destroyed all the trees here, and then a war zone was cleared. In the center of the battlefield is a half-sized fire dragon. It is 4 to 5 meters long. Its body is covered with dark and solid scales. The sharp spines on its back have also taken shape. Its long wings flap gently like a strong wind. It is Norbert, but now it is several times larger than a week ago, and it no longer looks like a baby dragon with deformity. Surrounding it are a group of strange creatures, about 10 or so. Above the waist, they are human, with red hair and beards, but below the waist, they have brown-red shiny horse bodies, with a long red tail trailing behind them. They were naked, wearing only some ornaments woven from vegetation, holding spears or bows and arrows in their hands. They were aiming at the fire dragon and attacking non-stop. They seemed to have a great advantage, but their attacks could not penetrate the fire dragon's strong scales. But Norbert was not the same. Although it was surrounded by people, it was not injured. Instead, it caused some casualties to the centaurs. Taking advantage of its ability to fly, it kept taking off and then swooping down. Each dive brought huge amounts of threats to the centaurs, whether it was its dragon breath or its fangs. Neither of them can be resisted by the horse people. And its constantly flapping wings effectively affected the bows and arrows of the centaurs, making them unable to cause damage to the relatively fragile wing membrane. Coupled with its scales, there was literally nothing people could do against it. Yeting noticed that among the horse people, there was a tallest and strongest horseman, holding a short bow and constantly giving orders. He was probably the leader of the horse people. The fire dragon also understood this clearly. It cunningly launched several attacks on the clan leader, but he nimbly dodged them all. Unfortunately, during the dodge just now, the patriarch accidentally stumbled and fell to the ground. Centaurs are the same creatures as horses. Once they fall, they will be unable to get up for a while. However, the fire dragon seized this opportunity and launched another attack on him. The surrounding centaurs were furious when they saw this, and fired arrows one after another, but they were all firmly blocked by the dragon scales. Tragedy is about to happen. At this time, Yeting took action decisively. He lifted the illusion curse, pointed the wand at the fire dragon, and recited the eye spell. Although dragon scales have strong magic resistance, their eyes are their weak point, and the eye disease spell is the most effective spell to deal with dragons. A ray of white light was seen shooting out from the tip of the spell weaver and instantly hit the fire dragon's eyes. The swooping fire dragon let out a shrill dragon roar, and its flight trajectory became crooked. It lost its vision and couldn't find its direction at all, and finally hit a tree not far from the horse leader, shattering into pieces. A tree branch even hit him. All the centaurs were stunned by this accident, and they immediately discovered Yeting's appearance. A centaur rushed to the leader and helped him up. The centaur leader looked at Yeting and nodded friendly to him. "Thanks for your help, little pony." Yeting also said hello to the horseman leader, and then turned to the direction of the fire dragon. I saw Norbert finally struggling to get up, but looking at its twisted posture, we knew that the impact it had just had was not light. At this time, Yeting's eye disease spell still didn't work, and the fire dragon lost his eyesight, so he stayed motionless on the spot, using his sense of smell to track the direction of his opponents, and then sprayed a stream of dragon breath towards them. "Get out of the way!" The horseman leader shouted and jumped away quickly. This time he spoke English instead of the horseman's language, as if to remind Yeting. But Yeting stood calmly and pointed the spell weaver in the direction of the flames. Clear water like a spring, he recited the water-making spell loudly, but this time he used all his strength. What emerged from the tip of the wand was no longer gurgling water, but a huge torrent, which spurted towards the dragon's breath. Crash together. The dragon's breath made a shishi sound as soon as it came into contact with the water flow, and white high-temperature water vapor instantly enveloped the battlefield, separating the fire dragon from his opponent. "You are a powerful necromancer, little pony." The centaur leader appeared next to Yeting, looked at him with a complicated expression, and praised. "Thank you, but I'll save the words of praise until the battle is over." Yeting responded lightly and then nodded lightly. "Sweep the whirlwind quickly." Immediately, a strong wind blew from his direction. The white water vapor was quickly blown away, and the battlefield became clear again. I saw that the fire dragon in front of me had begun to try to flap its wings, and it seemed that its eyes had returned to normal. Dragon's magic resistance is truly uniquely powerful. Yeting was secretly envious, but he was not slow in casting spells. Instead of casting spells on the fire dragon, he aimed at the bush next to the fire dragon. The branches of the shrubs immediately turned into iron chains, tightly entangling the fire dragon that was about to take off. The fire dragon struggled hard and the iron chain formed by hasty shape-shifting could hardly hold up, and cracks appeared on the surface. "Now, attack its wings," Yeting said loudly to the horseman leader. The leader of the centaurs was worthy of being an experienced tribal leader. He reacted immediately. He spoke a few words loudly in centaurs, and the centaurs immediately shot bows and arrows at the wings of the fire dragon. Most of the bows and arrows did not penetrate the fire dragon's wing membrane, but there were still a few powerful and heavy arrows that successfully penetrated and got stuck on the wing membrane, including those shot by the horseman leader. However, before the centaurs could launch another salvo, Norbert successfully broke free from all the chains, then immediately flapped his wings vigorously and flew into the air. "What should we do? It's about to take off again." The horseman leader glanced at Yeting worriedly, looking a little guilty. "Our bows and arrows are too weak, so we can't help much." "No, you guys have been a big help." Yeting shook his head and showed a sly smile. He accurately used the shape-shifting technique on the arrows stuck in the wing membrane. Several arrows turned into heavy chain balls. Noble, who was flying in the air, lost his balance in an instant and fell hard to the ground, causing a stir. "Dust. Oh, it was such a hard fall." Yeting raised his eyebrows, waved his wand to disperse the dust, and then walked to the front doctor. This time the fire dragon couldn't get up at all, and it probably broke its leg this time. It raised its head hard and wanted to bite Yeting, but a white light flashed from Yeting's side and hit the fire dragon's head. Its big head seemed to have been hit by a heavy hammer, and it fell heavily to the ground. The centaurs took a closer look and saw a white cat sitting on the head of the fire dragon, licking its paws gracefully. "Chief, I feel powerful magic. This is a magical creature, it should come from the east." A young centaur with platinum hair and blue eyes came forward and said to the centaur leader. The horseman leader nodded, and he thought more highly of Yeting. "Thank you, Fiju." Yeting smiled at the white cat, then picked up a branch from the ground and pointed it with the spell weaver, and the branch immediately turned into a sharp sword. He held the sword over his head with both hands, then aimed at the fire dragon's neck and swung it hard. The dragon's blood splattered everywhere, and the dragon's neck was cut into 2 pieces. The fire dragon trembled horribly for a while before it died completely. Yeting's achievement as Dragon Slayer was achieved just like that. 0. Chapter 68. After the battle, Yeting and the centaurs did not speak. They cleaned the battlefield silently. Yeting used a temporary shape-shifting sword to dissect the fire dragon. He was distracted by collecting various materials from the carcass of the fire dragon, while using an automatic quill pen to record the dissection diagram of the fire dragon in his notebook. The centaurs were bandaging the wounded, collecting the shot arrows, and gathering the bodies of the victims. Yeting simply arrived in time, so apart from the 2 corpses at the beginning, there were no more sacrifices from the centaur tribe. Soon both parties finished their work. The leader of the horse people came to Yeting with his people. "Hello, little pony." He greeted Yeting in a gentle tone. "I am the leader of the Forbidden Forest Centaur tribe, Marjorie. On behalf of the Centaur tribe, I would like to thank you for your help." Yeting also introduced himself. "My name is Yeting, and I am a first-year student at Hogwarts." Hearing this, the centaurs had expressions of surprise on their faces. After being neighbors with Hogwarts for so many years, they still knew what happened in the first grade, but Yeting's performance just now was obviously better than that of the others. Most adult necromancers admire this greatly. "You are a powerful little pony." Marjorie looked at him seriously and said slowly, "You not only have powerful magic power, but also a kind heart. I want to thank you for saving us from the evil dragon. Necromancers who can stand up in times of crisis deserve our respect." After speaking, he bowed to Yeting solemnly, and all the centaurs behind him followed suit. "This is incredible." It was obviously their necromancer who put the fire dragon in the Forbidden Forest, but the centaurs actually wanted to thank him for his help. Yeting smiled bitterly, explained the origin of the fire dragon to the centaurs, and offered to apologize to them on behalf of Hagrid. There was a sad expression on Margaret's face, but he shook his head and said to Yeting, "You are an honest little pony, but you don't have to apologize to us, because it is not you who brought sin and death. Hagrid, a mistake was made, and the Death Eater's descendant was the source of the evil. We will hold the culprits accountable. But we thank you for coming forward. From now on, you have won the friendship of the Centaurs tribe, and the Forbidden Forest welcomes you at any time. Yeting sighed and secretly lamented that Malfoy was so unlucky that he took the blame. Who knew that his father was once a notorious Death Eater? When his name was mentioned, even Centaurs knew Malfoy this surname. Then, he took out a few bottles of potion for treating burns and promoting wound healing from his dragon skin pocket, handed them to Marjorie, and explained to him how to use them. Marjorie did not suspect anything and distributed the potion directly to the injured without any trial. From this point of view, they were indeed a noble and proud race. Then, Margaret invited Yeting to attend their celebration banquet, but Yeting declined politely. Before leaving, he said that if the materials collected from the young dragon were made into potions, he would remember to give a share to the centaurs. The two parties just said goodbye, and Yeting hurried back to Hogwarts in the night, but he discovered that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed centaur had been escorting him to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. This dragon-slaying trip was indeed very fruitful. Not only did he further study dragons and harvest many precious magic materials, he also gained the friendship of the Centaurs tribe, which meant that he could find various kinds of magic in the Forbidden Forest. Precious magic materials without the help of local snakes like the centaurs, just finding the location of the medicinal materials would be a problem. After learning about Norbert's ending, Hagrid was depressed for several days, but his troubles were not completely resolved because he still had to find a way to apologize to the Centaurs tribe and repair the relationship between the two parties. Harry and Ron were surprised when they heard about the battle between Centaurs and Norbert, and then realized the real danger of fire dragons. Definitely, the current Harry and Ron have no chance to care about Norbert and Hagrid, because they have to face an unfortunate thing. They were asked to be put in solitary confinement because of a fight between you and Hagrid, and they were thought to be dead on Friday. He had a fight with Malfoy at night and burned Malfoy's butt. The dragon matter was concealed. The one who was confined together with them was Malfoy. Because Malfoy's butt was recovering from an injury, the confinement was delayed for several days. Finally, the day of confinement arrived, and it was Filch who arranged the content of their confinement. This old man was very unpopular with the little necromancers, and he himself would seize every opportunity to punish the little necromancers who violated the rules. Facing Filch's ugly smile, all three of them shuddered. They believed that the punishment would be terrible because Filch was smiling very happily. However, what happened next made Harry almost laugh out loud, because Filch brought them to Hagrid. If they were going to labor with Hagrid, that wouldn't be so bad. Harry thought this, but only heard Filch say, "You probably thought you were going to have a good time with that idiot, right? Think about it again, kid, you are going to the Forbidden Forest. If you can come out safe and sound, even if I'm wrong." After hearing this, Ron couldn't help but snorted, and Malfoy stopped suddenly. "Forbidden Forest," he followed, his voice far less calm than usual. "We can't go in the middle of the night, there's everything in there. I heard there are werewolves. You only have yourself to blame, right?" Filch said, his voice cheerful. "You should have thought of these werewolves before you got into trouble, right?" Filch threatened them and then went back happily. And Hagrid told them their mission tonight. "Number 567, look over there," Hagrid said. "Do you see that shiny thing on the ground? Silvery white? That's the unicorn's blood. A unicorn in the Forbidden Forest was seriously injured by something. This is the second time in a week. I found one dead last Wednesday. We must fight to find that poor unicorn and put it out of its misery. What if the thing that hurt the unicorn finds us first?" Malfoy asked, uncontrollable fear in his voice. "As long as you are with me or Fang, no creature in the Forbidden Forest will harm you," Hagrid said. "Don't leave the path. Okay, now we have to split into two groups and follow the bloodstains separately. There are bloodstains everywhere. Apparently, it has been stumbling around since at least last night." "I want Fang," Malfoy said hurriedly, looking at Fang's long teeth. "Okay, but let me remind you, it is a coward," Hagrid said. "Well, Harry and I will go one way and Malfoy, Ron and Fang will go the other way. If anyone finds the unicorn, shoot out green sparks, understand? Take out your wands and practice." "Yes, okay, if anyone is in trouble, just fire red sparks and we will all come to find you." "Okay, everyone, be more careful, we." Chapter 69. At the moment, Yeting, who was collecting magic materials in the Forbidden Forest, also received help from the centaurs. "I'm sorry, mighty little pony. A centaur with red hair and a beard said to Yeting in a melancholy and slow tone, "My name is Ronan, and I am the envoy sent by the leader. We centaurs we never bring trouble to foals, but this time we have to ask you for help. It's an honor to serve you." Yeting nodded politely to him. During this period, he would go to the Forbidden Forest every day to look for magic materials, and the centaurs tribe would always send a member as his guide, so the friendship between the two parties was maintained well. This time the centaurs asked for help and he was happy to help. "What trouble have you gotten into? Mars is very bright tonight, but Jupiter is dim," Ronan sighed. "It is always the innocent who suffer first. This has been the case for hundreds of years, and it is still the case now. These horse people are always mysterious, and they never get straightforward answers from them. They always look up at the stars and don't pay attention to other things." However, Yeting still had a little understanding of the astrology of the horse people, and he quickly came to a conclusion: Mars represents conflicts and wars, and is an evil star. He rules the unfortunate 6th house, so it also brings evil omens. Therefore, bright Mars probably means that the Forbidden Forest is invaded by some troublesome guy, usually a black necromancer or a dark creature. Jupiter here refers to something that is threatened. If it is placed in the Forbidden Forest, it is either an animal or some precious plant. There are many animals and plants corresponding to Jupiter. If you answer Mars, it means, did something attack the unicorn? Hearing this question, Ronan glanced at Yeting in surprise. Among the necromancers he knew, except for Dumbledore, most of them would complain that they were mysterious centaurs and did not speak well. But even Dumbledore would not speak out what he said in one mouthful like the child in front of him. Of true information. Yes, Ronan nodded and sighed melancholy. One unicorn has been hit by an accident, and now another one is injured. The murderer is not only powerful but also very cautious. We need your help. If it's to save unicorns, Yeting's expression became serious, I have no shirking responsibility. We can know from the original work that it was Voldemort who hunted unicorns in the Forbidden Forest in order to survive. So, Yeting said goodbye to Ronan and searched alone in the Forbidden Forest. By a creek, he saw a silver stain, which was the blood of a unicorn, but when he used the tracking spell, nothing happened. Voldemort is really cautious. Even in the Forbidden Forest, he has considered the tracking method of necromancer. Yeting sighed, unicorns are indeed the darlings of nature, and the tracking spell has no effect on them. As expected, they can only rely on plug-ins. So he called out Fija softly. The little white cat understood immediately, walked forward and smelled the blood, then chose a direction and led the way gracefully. Fija swerved among the trees and soon brought Yeting to a lake. The bright silver moon hangs in the black sky, reflecting the moonlight on the black lake. On the tranquil lakeside, a beautiful silver-white creature bathes in the moonlight, forming a beautiful picture. However, at the moment, there was another long wound on the leg of the beautiful creature. Silver blood flowed from the wound to the grass, shimmering like white pearls, and the whole picture began become poignant. It's really cruel. Seeing this injured unicorn, even a researcher like Yeting, who can sometimes be ruthless, felt love, sympathy and anger towards the attacker. He stepped forward lightly, fearing to disturb this beautiful creature. This is just a half-sized unicorn. It is silver-white all over, with soft silver manes on its back, and the spiral horn on its forehead has not faded from the golden color of its childhood. It has a slender body, not as strong as a horse, nor as short as a donkey, but very fit and agile. At the moment, facing Yeting's approach, the unicorn just raised its head, glanced at him with its melancholy and pure eyes, and then continued to lick its wounds. How come? Aren't unicorns supposed to be only interested in pure girls? Could it be that I'm so handsome that I can't even recognize him if I don't dress up as a unicorn? Yeting was really shocked by its reaction, but he immediately remembered another term for unicorns. Unicorns do not really only like pure girls. In fact, only male unicorns have this characteristic, while female unicorns are more willing to contact boys. Definitely, unicorns have very high requirements for humans. The first point is appearance, and there are definitely various other requirements. Those who meet the requirements will have the chance to touch or even ride a unicorn. Definitely based on the spirituality of unicorns, the relationship between them and their riders is not an ordinary master-slave relationship, but friends and partners. Stop it, stop here. But it seems like this unicorn is a girl. Is she attracted to me? So, Yeting took a step further and walked slowly to the unicorn, tentatively stretched out his hand and stroked her fur. But the unicorn didn't respond. No, it's not that there is no reaction, but it is obvious that he likes this kind of touch. The unicorn's fur was a little cold, but very delicate and soft, which reminded Yeting of a girl's skin. Yes, it felt like this when he pinched Hermione's face. Really, touching a unicorn is like touching a cute little animal and a pure and beautiful girl at the same time. Well, what a depraved touch. Fiju next to him screamed dissatisfiedly. It seemed that she was jealous, so Yeting had to touch her head to show fairness. However, after making sure that the unicorn fully accepted him, Yeting skillfully treated her wound, then took out a healing potion and applied it to the wound, and then wrapped it with a bandage. The process was a bit painful, and the one-horned beast looked at Yeting aggrievedly, with tears even filling its eyes. But in the end she endured it and looked cool. What a strong kid! Yeting patted her head with satisfaction and was about to say something. Suddenly, Fiju stood up alertly and stared at a bush not far away. Yeting followed her line of sight, but there was only darkness there. Then, the unicorn also looked in that direction, and seemed to have discovered something, and seemed to want to stand up. Considering her wound, Yeting pushed her to the ground, but when he touched her skin, Yeting found that the unicorn was actually trembling. The culprit who caused her injury must have come first, which scared her. Don't be afraid, I will protect you. Yeting comforted her in her ear, which made the unicorn less nervous. So he stood up, took out his wand, pointed it in that direction, and was ready to go. Chapter 70. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound from the bushes in front of me. Yeting's nerves immediately became tense. You know, he will face Voldemort, the man known as the most powerful black necromancer in history. Although the current Voldemort can only parasitize on the back of Professor Quirrell's head, no one knows what other powerful methods he has. Soon, the bushes trembled, and then, a hooded figure emerged from the shadows. It was stooped and staggering, as if it was about to fall down at any time. Mr. Yat, the hooded man spoke, his voice was quite low and hoarse, but he could still hear that it was Professor Quirrell's voice. Ting Yat, why did you appear in the Forbidden Forest at this time? Professor Quirrell asked Yeting in a cold tone that he had never experienced before, approaching him as he spoke. Stay where you are, Professor Quirrell. Yeting pointed his wand at him and shouted loudly, or I can use magic to make you stand where you are. Hearing this, Professor Quirrell stopped. You actually pointed a wand at a professor, he sneered, and threatened Yeting. You appeared in the Forbidden Forest in the middle of the night and pointed a wand at the professor. If you don't repent, Ravenclaw will do it. You will be deducted points, and you will also be detained. Seeing that Voldemort in front of him actually pretended to be Professor Quirrell to trick him, Yeting felt that his IQ was insulted. Are you kidding me? He mocked 680 in a cold tone, or has the Dark Lord fallen so low that he has to rely on liars to survive? When Professor Quirrell heard this, he was obviously stunned for a moment, and then started to tremble with anger. Do you recognize me? His voice suddenly became sharp, as if it were not a human noise. Genius of Ravenclaw, dirty mudblood, how did you recognize me? I've noticed something wrong with Professor Quirrell for a long time, Yeting explained calmly in a cold voice. The smell of garlic all over your body is obviously to cover up your stink, and the trick of the troll on Halloween can't be fooled either. You still want to kill Harry in the Quidditch match, coupled with the desire for the Sorcerer's Stone and the thirst for unicorn blood. No one can meet the above conditions except you, the half-dead Dark Lord. Definitely, he made this up all in order to scare Voldemort and delay the unicorn. The healing potion cannot take effect so quickly, and if there is an injured unicorn present, there is no way to let go. Humph, really? After listening to Yeting's analysis, Voldemort snorted coldly, but he was secretly frightened and sighed at the wisdom of the first-year necromancer in front of him, so he threatened, sure enough, he is worthy of being a Ravenclaw. Genius, it's a pity, Ebe, you shouldn't come here, it will cost you your life. Throw away your life. Yeting asked back, I think you are the one who is going to lose your life. You actually killed the unicorn in the Forbidden Forest. Aren't you afraid of the curse? No, you are definitely not afraid, because you must rely on the curse in the unicorn's blood to remain half-dead, right? Since you already know, he said in a whisper, then get out of the way. My target is only the unicorn behind you. If you leave now, I can spare your life. I can even after returning, I specifically allow you, a lowly muggle, to become my subordinate. I can see that you have strength far beyond your peers. Hearing what he said, Yeting laughed out loud, as if he had heard some ridiculous joke. Leave here? Join your men? Just you? You, a half-dead, homeless dog, can't even save yourself, but you still have the nerve to threaten me here? Don't you have half the blood of a lowly muggle? Facing Yeting's sarcasm, Voldemort couldn't bear it anymore. He waved his wand, and a green light flew towards Yeting. Originally, Yeting only needed to dodge slightly and the green light would not be able to hit him. However, in order to protect the unicorn behind him, Yeting had to forcefully accept the magic. He used Spell Weaver to cast a shape-shifting spell on the dead wood next to him, and the dead wood immediately rose from the ground and turned into a thick cement wall. The green light hit the cement wall and made a big crater in it, but it was still blocked. Too weak, Yeting sighed, sighing in an aria-like tone, the mighty Dark Lord is now so weak that he can't even handle 10 first-year necromancers. Voldemort was almost mad at his words. He began to bombard Yeting regardless of his magic power. Yeting responded calmly, using shape-shifting or counter-spells to block Voldemort's attack. Finally, Voldemort stopped his frantic attack. His original condition was not very good, and he was almost exhausted of his magic power after all this waste. Yeting immediately seized the opportunity and cast a crushing spell on the opponent. The spell hit Voldemort, but he was not blown to pieces. There was probably some means to prevent the blow, but the spell did not completely fail. He lay on the ground with a face full of pain. You cunning mudblood! Voldemort cursed through gritted teeth, and then his whole body turned into a black smoke, avoiding the second crushing curse of the haze. A big hole was immediately blasted into the ground. However, the black smoke disappeared into the dark jungle, and Yeting lost Voldemort's location. He had to concentrate and be on guard, but fortunately there were 2 magical creatures around him who acted as radars. Suddenly, the unicorn hissed towards the jungle on the left. Yeting turned around and saw the black smoke condensed into Voldemort. A blast of green magic shot toward Yeting, with the aura of death in the light. It's Avada Kedavra. This spell was almost impossible to resist with ordinary spells, but Yeting still did not move. He calmly used the spell to catch a fish in the lake. The fish flew up in the air and blocked the attack of the death curse. But Voldemort seized the opportunity to take the lead and continued his offensive. Next, 2 more death curses flew towards him. Yeting caught another fish and a rabbit to block 2 attacks respectively. However, he was no longer able to block the 4th death curse attack. Small animals that are not big enough are not enough to resist the death curse, but Yeting couldn't do anything in a short time. I can reach the 4th one. Small animals used. His right hand had already reached into his pocket, almost summoning Oriana immediately. At this moment, the unicorn behind him tugged on his cloak with his mouth. Yeting looked back and saw that the unicorn had stood up smoothly, and her injuries had been greatly healed. The 4th death curse flew towards Yeting. Before Yeting could react, the unicorn bravely stepped forward and blocked the death curse. The killing curse hit her horn and then strangely lost its effect. This shocked Yeting. He didn't know that a unicorn's horn could have this effect. But when you think about the powerful magic resistance of unicorn fur, this seems reasonable. Definitely, at this time, the unicorn's horn was also burnt black, and it seemed that it would not be like this again in a short time. The unicorn glanced at Yeting, his eyes full of pride, definitely, an expectation of praise. Yeting was a little dumbfounded. She looked like a little girl, but he still touched her soft mane as a reward. Then, the unicorn walked up to Yeting, ducked slightly, and motioned for him to ride on. For the unicorn, being allowed to ride is a further step in the relationship than petting. It seems that his behavior has furthered the relationship between the unicorn and him. Yeting was just stunned for a moment, then he quickly stood up and looked at Voldemort who was recovering his magic power in the distance. It's time to turn the offensive. Chapter 71. The ensuing battle was almost one-sided. Yeting rode a unicorn and faced Voldemort, who lacked magic power, and had the upper hand in speed and attack. As a result, Voldemort had to turn into black smoke and be driven around by him. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps and horse hooves was heard in the distance. There were necromancers and centaurs who heard the sound of fighting and came after hearing the news. Seeing that he had no chance to attract the attention of the unicorn, Voldemort immediately stopped dealing with Yeting, turned into black smoke again, and disappeared into the jungle. Yeting watched him leave and did not pursue him. This was not a good opportunity to kill him. Just need to wait a few days. Yeting rode the unicorn back to the lake, where he met someone he expected. Ting Yat! Hagrid shouted, "Why are you here? Oh my god, what are you riding on? A unicorn! How did you do that?" Beside him, Harry was also very surprised. He couldn't believe that he could meet Yeting here, and he was riding a legendary creature, a beautiful unicorn. Behind him, two centaurs greeted Yeting one after another with a very pleasant tone. "Hello, my mighty pony, you always do things that surprise us. Since you are riding this unicorn, that means the crisis has been resolved, right? Hello, Bane, and Ronan." Yeting nodded to them lightly. "You are right, there is a half-dead black necromancer who broke into the Forbidden Forest and wanted to drink the blood of unicorns. Extension of life, I've driven him away, I guess he won't dare to come back again. He didn't say Voldemort's name. It's really thanks to you this time." Ronan sighed and complimented, "You have helped us once again and also helped the Forbidden Forest. We really don't know how to thank you. I can only say that the Centaurs tribe will always be grateful to you. We'll be your partner. Do you still need to tell me?" Bane patted Yeting on the shoulder. Yeting, who was riding the unicorn, was only a little shorter than him, and said, "This little pony has already been approved by Dolu. This has never happened in the past 500 years, and for this reason alone, the Forbidden Forest will always welcome him." "Well, do you have a good relationship?" Seeing their familiar chat, Hagrid was a little confused. "That's definitely," Bane replied happily, and then glared at Hagrid, "This little pony has helped us twice. The last time was to solve the trouble you caused." "Oh, I'm so sorry," Hagrid apologized in a low voice, but he became sad again because he thought about Norbert's death, so Harry had to comfort him in a low voice. 5 people and a unicorn walked to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Here, Yeting turned over and got off the unicorn. He was going back to Hogwarts Castle. The unicorn entangled him, kept rubbing its head on his chest, and licked his face with its tongue, obviously reluctant to let him leave. "I have to go." Yeting sighed and said warmly, "Before I leave, let me give you a name." The unicorn cast an expectant look at him. "La Rui." Yeting said, "I will call you La Rui. This name will serve as my expectation for you." Lori hissed happily, obviously liking the name. "She will definitely like it. This name is the name of the unicorn goddess in the Forgotten Realms world of D&D. Then, Yeting drew a symbol on La Rui's forehead. There was an immediate feeling of soul connection between him and La Rui. This is a contract, which Yeting learned from the contract between Fiju and Oriana after he summoned them. As the relationship between him and La Rui continues to deepen, this contract will continue to strengthen, and one day it will develop into the same contract as Fiju and the others. Finally, he looked at Bane and Ronan. "Please, do me a favor," he requested. "Laurie's injury is not fully healed yet, please help me take care of her. It's all on us." Bane nodded generously. "It is an honor for us centaurs to be able to help the Holy Unicorn." Ronan also agreed. So, Yeting made up his mind to fall in love with La Rui immediately and walked towards Hogwarts Castle. Behind him, La Rui looked at her reluctantly, her pure eyes full of tears. After returning to Hogwarts, Yeting soon had to face questioning from the girls. He had returned to the Ravenclaw lounge late at night for several days in a row. Although others did not discover all this, how could the girls who were paying attention to him not know? In desperation, Yeting had to selectively tell them some of his experiences. When they heard that Yeting had made friends with the centaurs, they were just curious and envious. But when they heard about the unicorn, whether it was the senior sister who was always calm or Zhongqiu who was afraid of the Forbidden Forest, they all became excited immediately. Girls are indeed beauty conscious. The 3 of them kept asking questions about unicorns. Hermione even questioned Yeting because of the common sense that unicorns are only close to pure girls, but in the end, they all expressed that they wanted to see Law with their own eyes. "Rui. 0, please give me flowers." However, this was impossible because the final exams at Hogwarts were about to begin, and Yeting had no choice but to promise them that he would take them to meet Zinrui after the exams. Definitely, there is still a problem, that is, since that night, Professor Quirrell has disappeared. He probably considered that Yeting might tell Dumbledore the truth, so he hid first. On the day of the exam, the weather was very hot, and the large classroom where they answered the questions was even more uncomfortably hot. The teacher gave them new quills specifically for exams, all with spells to prevent cheating. But for Yeting, these questions were too simple. He completed all the written tests within half an hour and then left the classroom, which put great pressure on other little necromancers. There are also practical exams. Professor Flitwick asked them to go into the classroom one by one and see if they could tap dance a pineapple across a desk. Yeting waved his magic wand at the pineapples, and a row of pineapples lined up on the desk. They danced tap dance according to Yeting's command until they walked around the table. This made everyone look at it. Professor Wei immediately gave him a perfect score. Professor McGonagall watched as they turned a mouse into a snuff box. The more elaborate the box, the higher the score. If the box still had a mouse's whiskers, points would be deducted. Yeting turned the mouse into a gorgeous enamel snuff box. He had seen such a handicraft with his own eyes when he was in Russia, and got another perfect score. When taking the potions exam, their goal was to make an amnesia potion. Snape stood behind and watched closely. Everyone could feel his breathing on the back of their necks, which made them very nervous. However, Yeting never cared about this. He was the first to complete the potion, and Professor Snape couldn't find anything wrong at all, so he had to pinch his nose and give him a perfect score. The last exam was the history of magic. Although Yeting didn't study much, he used the method he used to study history when he was studying science in high school, a temporary memorization. He actually got a perfect score. In other words, all his grades were full marks and the professors were very satisfied with him. Definitely, the real results haven't come out yet, and they still have a week to leisurely stay at Hogwarts. Factory. Chapter 72. After the exam, Harry and Ron followed the crowd outside to the sunny field to bask in the sun. They walked slowly down the slope to the lake and plopped down under the tree. Over there, a large squid lay basking in the warm shallow water, while the Weasley twins and Lee Jordan gently fiddled with its tentacles. Harry hasn't been happy since the exams ended, and his scar has been hurting. Ron suggested that he go to Madame Pomfrey's, but Harry thought this was an omen, a warning, meaning that danger was coming. He couldn't get rid of a vague feeling that he had forgotten to do something very important. He recalled Hagrid, recalled what he said about the secret of the trapdoor at the end of the corridor, recalled Nico Flamel and the role of the Sorcerer's Stone, recalled that day in the Forbidden Forest. Yeting mentioned to him the effect of the blood of the unicorn in 290, and the black necromancer that attacks the unicorn in his mouth. It's Voldemort who wants the Philosopher's Stone. He suddenly said loudly, startling Ron. Can you please stop saying that name? Ron said in a low voice. Voldemort is still alive, but he is dying, Harry continued with great excitement. He wanted the Philosopher's Stone to extend his life. Before that, he went to the Forbidden Forest to kill unicorns for this reason. What? The mysterious man is actually alive? Ron couldn't believe it. Suddenly, Harry jumped up. Where are you going? Ron asked confused. I suddenly remembered something. Harry said. His face turned pale. We must find Hagrid immediately. Don't you think it's a little strange? Harry said as he hurried down the grassy slope. What Hagrid wants most is a dragon, but a stranger happens to have a dragon egg in his pocket. How many people have done this? Tien is walking around with dragon eggs? You know that is against the necromancer law. Don't you think they are very lucky to find Hagrid? Why didn't I think of this before? After arriving at Hagrid's hut, they learned from him that Hagrid had indeed told the stranger who gave him the dragon egg how to deal with the three-headed dog. Then, Hagrid showed a horrified expression. I shouldn't have told you this, he blurted. Forget what I said. Hey, where are you going? Ron and Harry ran towards the foyer, bumping into Yeting, Hermione, and Zhang Qiu. They had just gone to the Forbidden Forest to see Laurie, and now the two girls were excitedly discussing the pure and beautiful unicorns. Senior Pinello didn't go. Ron's brother Percy Weasley asked her out, saying it was important. What are you doing running so fast? Hermione asked curiously. Harry's eyes lit up when he saw the three people in front of him, and he hurriedly explained his entire conjecture to them. My views are generally consistent with yours. On the way back to the castle, Yeting said to them, I think Voldemort is indeed plotting to resurrect, but in terms of the candidate behind the scenes, I still stick to my own point of view. Snape is innocent here. The black necromancer I drove away is definitely not Snape. You said that name, Hermione screamed. That's too dangerous. I'm not afraid of Voldemort. Yeting snorted coldly and said proudly, he is just a lost dog now. If he feels fear just because of his name, how can we fight against him? He is definitely not afraid. A few days ago, he defeated Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest. You're right, Harry cast an approving look at Yeting, because he was the second person besides Harry himself who dared to say that name. We have to keep our courage. However, when Yeting took them to the mechanism in the principal's office and opened it, they discovered that Dumbledore was not there. Suddenly, a voice sounded behind them. What are you five doing in the principal's office? It was Professor McGonagall, holding a large stack of books in her arms. However, from Professor McGonagall, they knew that Dumbledore was summoned to London by an urgent letter from the Ministry of Magic. Harry told Professor McGonagall his speculation about the Philosopher's Stone, but Professor McGonagall didn't believe it, and they had to leave angrily. On the way back, they also met Professor Snape, who had a weird smile and was obviously in a happy mood. So Harry decided to get the Philosopher's Stone in advance. Ron, Hermione, and Cho Chang all thought this was a crazy idea and would be fired if found out. But on this point, Yejian expressed his agreement. Although I don't think Snape will be the real murderer, I do think there is such a person. He wants to get the Sorcerer's Stone to resurrect Voldemort. If they really succeed, what should we do? Then Huogvaz may not exist anymore, but now you are still worried about being expelled. These words made the other three people ashamed, and they all expressed their intention to join this mission. They made an appointment to do it that night, but something happened to Gryffindor again. Neville Longbottom discovered their plan and wanted to stop them, but Harry put him down on the ground, and Ron tied him up awkwardly with a curtain, which wasted a long time. When they arrived at the door of the room, Yeting, Hermione, and Zhongqiu had been waiting for a long time. They opened the door to the room, and a low barking sound immediately sounded in their ears. Although the big dog couldn't see them, all three of its noses were twitching and sniffing crazily towards them. What's that thing at its feet? Hermione asked quietly. It looks like a harp, said Ron. It must have been left by Snape. Which of you can play the harp? Everyone looked at each other. Who knows how to play this? In the end, Yeting had no choice but to step forward. There was an old harp in Wu's orphanage. When he was still in the orphanage, Kong Boring studied it on his own for a while. He held the harp in his arms and played it gracefully. The sound was sweet and had a long aftertaste. Everyone else showed expressions of enjoyment. Hermione and Zhongqiu even looked at him with eyes shining brightly. After the flowing music ended, Yeting put down his harp and bowed to them. Girl with flaxen hair, thank you all. The four people applauded involuntarily. However, for Lu Wei, this beautiful music is another matter. As soon as Yeting played the first note, the big dog's eyes began to pull downwards. As the song ended, the big dog's barking stopped, it swayed a few times, its knees softened and it knelt down, then fell to the floor and fell into a deep sleep. So they all walked around the big dog and came to the trap door. Chapter 73. Opening the trap door, it was dark below and there was no ladder to go down. Yeting was the first. He jumped down nimbly and landed on something soft. No problem, he yelled toward the hole, which now looked like a spot the size of a postage stamp file. This is a soft landing, you can jump. I will catch you. That being said, when Harry and Ron jumped down, Yeting just supported them, and when Hermione and Zhongqiu jumped down, he basically caught them like a princess. It made them blush. But Ron and Harry had no choice but to secretly criticize Yeting for focusing on S*X over friends. What is this? Ron asked, feeling the strange dampness and softness of the ground. I don't know, it seems to be a kind of plant. It is probably laid here to reduce the collision when falling. Zhongqiu touched the ground curiously and replied. To be honest, I'm lucky to have this pile of plants spread here. Ron said. What a blessing! Hermione screamed, look at you. She jumped up suddenly and struggled towards a damp wall. The reason she was struggling like this was because the plants on the ground moved and wrapped around her legs. The most unlucky one was Ron. The thing stretched out snake-like tendrils, wrapped around his ankles, and hung him upside down. Others were also unknowingly entangled in long vines. This is a devil's net. Hermione screamed and kept struggling, devil's net, devil's net. What did Professor Sprout say? He said it likes darkness and moisture. Before she could remember what exactly devil's net was afraid of, Yeting took action. The flames are blazing. A huge wave of fire shot out from the tip of the spell weaver. In all the places swept by the wave of fire, the devil's vines were burned out, and those wrapped around the little necromancers were also burned due to the high temperature and heat nearby. Bright and automatically retreat. Seriously, Hermione? Yeting stopped the fire spell and turned to her. Your knowledge is actually profound enough, but you are still too nervous when facing emergencies, so you think about everything. If you don't want to get up, I suggest you practice magic dueling. Okay, I will. Hermione lowered her head in shame. This time she could obviously think of a solution, but in the end her mind got stuck because she was too panicked. So, they continued to move forward, and there seemed to be gentle rustling and tinkling sounds in front of them. Coming to the end of the corridor, there is a brightly lit room with a high vaulted ceiling. Countless little birds, as dazzling as gems, fluttered around the room. There is a heavy wooden door on the opposite side of the room. Ron was worried that these little birds would attack them as they passed through the room, but when he plucked up the courage and quickly rushed to the other end of the room, he was safe. He came to the door unscathed and pulled the handle. The door was locked. These birds, they can't be just for decoration, said Hermione. They are keys. Winged keys, look carefully. Apparently that means. They saw several broomsticks in the corner of the room. Among them, Yeting, Harry and Zhongqiu were the best at flying broomsticks. Each of them got on a broomstick and started searching among the birds. But there are too many keys, and it is a huge problem to find the one that can open the door from so many keys. No. Zhongqiu was the first to give up searching. That's not right. We can't find the right one among so many keys. It's impossible for Dumbledore to design a level that can't be completed at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to enter it themselves. There must be other ideas. His words reminded Yeting, so he returned to the ground and took out his wand. The keys are coming. Sure enough, among Flight's keys, a silver-white, antique key flew out and was caught by Yeting. It still wanted to struggle, but Yeting's strength prevented it from moving. He inserted it into the keyhole and twisted it hard. Yes, that was it. There was a click, and as soon as the door lock popped open, the key flew away again. It was grabbed too hard and looked drunk. The second room was completely dark and nothing could be seen. But as soon as they stepped in, the room suddenly became brightly lit, illuminating a shocking scene. They were standing next to a chessboard with huge amounts of black chess pieces in front of them. Those chess pieces were taller than them and seemed to be carved from black stones or something like that. At the other end of the room, facing them, were some white chess pieces. What now? Harry whispered. Isn't it obvious? Ron said. He is best at playing necromancer. Coming here is like coming to the home court. We had to play chess to get across the room. They saw a door behind the white chess piece. How? Hermione asked nervously. The way I see it, said Ron, we have to be pawns. He walked up to a black knight and reached out to touch the knight's horse. Immediately, the stone came to life, the horse paved the soil with its hooves, and the knight turned his helmeted head and looked at Ron. Do we, have to go with you? Black Knight nodded. In other words, we have to replace 5 of the chess pieces. Hermione analyzed, we must win, and these 5 chess pieces cannot be eaten during the battle. What will happen if you are eaten? Zhongqiu 997 asked in a daze. Probably. Yeting gestured to her with a scratch on his neck. This is a test of skills. Zhongqiu shrank his neck in fear, I can't do this. Ron, what about you? Harry looked at his best friend, I remember you are very good at this. Ron was a little eager to try, but after thinking about it carefully, he was a little scared. I would be more confident if there were only 3. Suddenly, Yeting asked, how is necromancer played? He had originally planned to learn to play necromancer, but he was so busy making brooms and staffs, dealing with fire dragons, and saving unicorns that he completely forgot about it. It's exactly the same as ordinary chess, except that the chess pieces are all alive. Playing chess is like commanding an army, and the chess pieces will provide advice, so you have to know the temper of the chess pieces clearly, and you won't be able to do it when you are commanding. Any trouble? Hermione replied, you haven't been in trouble before, have you? So what? Isn't this very simple? Yeting's eyes lit up. Isn't this a turn-based game turning into a real-time strategy game? If we compare it to this, who is afraid of whom? Let me do it. He said loudly, it's just protecting 5 chess pieces, nothing to worry about. However, when other people heard that this was his first time playing necromancer, they all said they were afraid to play. Chapter 74. Then I'll play for you and see. Yeting shrugged and walked forward. Black King obeyed his order and walked outside the venue. The first thing is to find out the temper of the chess pieces, Yeting said to himself, then, let me see what temper you have. He drew out the spell weaver and unleashed all the magic power in his body. Immediately, a huge torrent of magic power swept across Black's chessboard, and all the Black Knights were overwhelmed by this terrifying magic power. It took a while for Yeting to restrain his magic power. He was out of breath, but remained calm on the surface. He had just borrowed the powerful magic power of the spell weaver, but he could not fully control it. Now, who has the final say on this chessboard? He used a loud voice on himself, and then asked loudly. The chess pieces could not speak, but they all bowed their heads to him respectfully to express their submission. Even the Black King outside the field was no exception. The 4 people in the audience were stunned by this scene. They had never seen such a scene, but they could not feel the terrifying momentum without being on the chessboard. However, they still looked at Yeting with admiration. This man could always do some incredible things. Seeing that all the chess pieces showed their obedience, Yeting nodded with satisfaction and continued to announce loudly, I know you all have your own opinions on how to play chess and how to attack, and you all have more experience than me, but now, I am the commander, and I have only one requirement, that is, obedience. No other opinions. No independent action, only obey. After all the chess pieces hear my order, hesitation is not allowed. No matter whether there are mountains of swords and seas of fire ahead, they must be executed immediately. The 4 young necromancers were startled by such a rough and direct order that ignored the opinions of the chess pieces. They had never heard of such a straightforward order, especially when the commander who issued this order was still a newcomer, not an experienced veteran. Just when they thought the chess pieces were about to rebel, reality slapped them in the face again. All the chess pieces bowed their heads neatly to Yeting to show their submission. How could this happen? Ron muttered to himself in disbelief, is this the real way to play necromancer? He has never seen such hearty pre-match orders. You must know that all necromancer players must win over all the chess pieces before the game. Otherwise, if there are chess pieces that keep giving orders during the battle, it will be called unlucky. Woolen cloth. Only experienced chess players or master necromancers can gain the trust of the chess players from the beginning. Yeting's behavior completely subverted their common sense. However, the next scene that unfolded in front of them made them completely dumbfounded. After the duel began, I saw Yeting constantly giving out orders. He spoke very fast, wishing he could say more than a dozen words in 1 second. This completely exceeded the world record. This reflects the rapid calculation speed of Yeting's brain. He has to issue almost 4 or 5 commands per second, which is 8 or 9 times faster than his opponent. This means that he can control the movement of 8 or 9 times more chess pieces than his opponent at the same time. And each step has a clear idea, although the speed of each chess piece is limited, but Yeting's hand can control multiple chess pieces at the same time, that is, each chess piece takes 8 or 9 times more steps on average. This is not playing necromancer. He simply thinks of it as StarCraft. In this era, most people don't even know what StarCraft is. The little necromancers below were all stunned. Ron dared to swear with all the chocolate frog drawings he had that if Yeting could speak faster, he would definitely be able to control more chess pieces at the same time. Within a few minutes, White's chess pieces were divided, surrounded, and defeated one by one. They were all eaten up, while Black only lost 1 pawn at the beginning. When Yeting left the chessboard victorious, they still thought they were dreaming. Especially Ron, who was easily defeated by Yeting in what he was best at. He kept mumbling to himself, "How can you play like this? How can you play like this?" However, they still had to admit that a genius was a genius, and Yeting had just learned the rules and was able to win this game in this way. Now no one dared not believe that Yeting could lead them all through the level. So they all stepped onto the chessboard and acted as chess pieces for Yeting. Yeting asked the 2 knights and 2 necromancers to leave the chessboard. When passing Yeting, Ron said to him reluctantly, "With your level, you can participate in the International Necromancer Chess Competition. I don't think anyone can be your opponent." This time, Yeting won even more simply. He did not touch the knights and necromancers who were replaced by the necromancers at all. Instead, he used the castle to open the way. The minions took turns to attack the opponent's bottom line, and in the last breath he took out 4 queens. The minions reached the bottom line. Can be upgraded into a castle, knight, necromancer, queen, defeating White in one fell swoop. At the end of the game, the 5 of them were still standing on Black's bottom line, motionless. Is this a win? When they arrived at the last room, Zhang Chu was still immersed in the crushing game. Only through personal experience can you know how stressful it is to face an opponent 10 times faster than you in a real-time strategy game. After entering the next room, a disgusting stench hit their nostrils. They had to lift their clothes to cover their noses, and their eyes were filled with tears. This time Hermione thought of what to do in time. She waved her wand and gave everyone a head-soaking charm, and the Yin family finally calmed down. Through the transparent membrane, they saw a giant monster lying motionless on the floor in front of them, unconscious, with a large bloody mass on its head. Oh! It's such a disgusting guy again. Hermione frowned, fear flashed in her eyes, obviously remembering what happened on Halloween. Yeting noticed this and touched her head comfortingly. Harry opened the next door. For a moment, they didn't dare to look at what was waiting for them next, but there was nothing scary here. There was only a table with 7 bottles of different shapes arranged in front of it. As soon as they crossed the threshold, a flame rose up behind them and sealed the doorway. The flame was unusual, it was purple. At the same time, black flames burst out from the door leading to the front. They're stuck in the middle. This is Luo. Yeting explained to them, Luo is also called Devil's Flame. It is a very powerful black magic that cannot be extinguished by normal means. Only the corresponding cracking spell can deal with it. Good money is good, then what should we do? Ron panicked immediately, we won't be trapped in here. Look. Hermione grabbed a roll of parchment next to the bottle and read, danger is in front of you, safety is behind you. There are 2 of us who can help you. Drink them, one will lead you forward, the other will send you back to where you came from to eat. 2 contained nettle wine. 3 are killers, waiting in line. Take your pick, unless you want to be stuck here forever. We also provide 4 clues to help you choose. First, no matter how cunningly poisons hide, they actually stand to the left of nettle wine. Second, the contents of the bottles at the left and right ends are different. If you want to move forward, neither of them will be useful to you. Third, you will find that the phial sizes of the bottles are different, and there is no death god hidden in the giants and dwarfs. Fourth, the second on the left and the second on the right, although they look different, they taste the same. Haha, isn't this just a logic question at the elementary school level? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.